Community Services Board member. Mr. Smeaton is held in such high regard, not just here in the city, but around the region. He is truly a statesman, someone that we're all very, very proud of. And we were so proud to see him recognized recently on his recent appointment as a citizen judge. And we would ask that Judge Smeaton please come forward so that we can present him with a certificate. And I have to tell you, if you come forward, my first advice from this former mayor at our inaugural, when they were putting my chain of office on, was what was that great advice you gave me? Do you remember, Judge?
No.
His great advice was that chain is going to get heavier with time. And I appreciate that advice, and I'd like to just read to you the certificate that we presented. And if there's any comments or questions from council, well, we have the good judge in our midst. And as everybody talked about the wonderful track record that Bill has had in our community, was fitting that they would choose him to become a citizenship judge. On behalf of the members of City Council, I wish to extend my warmest congratulations and best wishes to you, Judge William Smeaton, on the occasion of the robing ceremony for your new position with Citizen and Immigration Canada. As you commemorate this new chapter in your life, we wish you much success and a lot of happiness. Congratulations, Judge Smeaton.
Yeah.
Share a few words with us, inspire us.
Well, I don't know about the inspiration, but I can tell you, Mr. Mayor, that it's an honor for me to be here tonight in a room that has a lot of memories for me, a little different configuration, and mostly new faces, but one who was here one term ahead of me and whom I've spent a lot of time with, and a good friend and colleague in former Mayor Thompson. And I do have a confession to make. Every once in a while, when I'm in this building on business, I'll go to that door and listen, and if the room's empty, I peek in. I have a lot of good memories in this room, and Erica, my wife, joins with me tonight, and I remember the first night I sat in your chair. It was a bit of a baptismal by fire, because market value assessment was the issue of the day, and it got to be, I think we had about 5 or 6 weeks running where you needed to bring in folding chairs in this room at the time, because it got to be quite an interesting show, but you people are used to that kind of thing in these days. Great honor to have served this city, and I won't begin to thank people by name, because in my robing ceremony, and you did an excellent job, by the way, put the robe on just right, very good on my shoulders, I appreciate that, you and some other fine people, but I won't mention names because I did leave out a couple that I had wanted to mention at that particular time. Except that I will thank my wife Erica once again for all the years that she put up with my absences, and as most of us around the table, I'm sure, if we were honest, would admit, Mr. Mayor, we do sometimes take the laundry home.
Yes.
And we take the worries home. But it's nice to have a resident psychiatrist, and I've had a good one. In my new role, I have quite an extended territory. I'm sitting in Hamilton a couple of days a week, here at least one, and the territory is all of Niagara, all of Halton and Norfolk, all of Brant County, all of Greater Hamilton, plus Burlington and Oakville. So it's quite a collection area, and the ceremonies are very enjoyable, but only represent about 10% of the time. Most of it is in hearings through the days of people who are contesting yeses or nos or whatever their issues are. And as you know, this country is looked upon worldwide as one of the finest places on earth to come to if you're leaving a situation that perhaps isn't as safe or as pleasant as it might be. So we have lots of applicants, and I'm one of some 35 judges that try and make sure we have the right people coming and try to make them welcome when they do come. But it's been an honor to have served the people of Niagara Falls for some 38 years elected, and a great privilege to continue in a role as a Canadian citizen my heart always, though, will be with my home city, the city of Niagara Falls. Thank you all very much. Best wishes to all of you, and as you take your task on, and I know we're in good hands with this council for sure. And best wishes to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. First time I've seen a standing ovation in this chamber, so good job. Thank you, Judge.
I never had one when I
What? Yeah.
Nice to see the federal government gets one right.
Were there any comments anyone else wanted to add to the, yes, Councilor Carrio.
Thank you, Mayor. Like I said, it's nice to see when the federal government finally gets one right. They couldn't have picked a finer gentleman and someone with more integrity than Bill Smeaton. I'm very happy for him and very proud to have been associated with him over many years.
Here, here. You're good. All right, thank you very much, Judge, and to your lovely wife, I'm sure the one that keeps you standing up after many of the ceremonies. And it was a real neat thing to see as he did his first swearing in. These people that are now welcomed into Canada as citizens, it's like they had just won the lottery. They were beaming ear to ear. They were so happy and so proud, and what an honor for us from Niagara Falls. So thank you very much, Judge. We appreciate your attendance and look forward to having you visit us again.
Thank you very much.
And you can peek in the chambers anytime you want and sit in this chair as well. All right, next up on the agenda, we have the Niagara Falls Humane Society fundraiser. And if I could ask Kathleen Mann to come forward, please, and approach the podium. Kathleen Mann's a volunteer and fundraising chair, and she's going to inform us about some of the upcoming fundraising events.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathleen Mann, Aaron Boyd, and
Bonnie Pearson.
we're here to make awareness of a second annual trivia night that we're having to raise funds in the Niagara Falls Humane Society. 3 of us are involved for our love of animals, especially the unfortunate ones that there are a lot of right now. We're going to be holding our second annual fundraiser to raise money. What we're aiming for is to have our own spay and neuter clinic right on site at the shelter. Our first annual, we raised over $6,000. We had about 140 people attend. This year, the hall that we were going to hold the trivia night at has been double booked, which is kind of a blessing in disguise. We have a much larger hall now, and that gives us the challenge of trying to sell more tickets so we can raise more funds. We are going to be having a silent auction as well, in addition to the trivia night. We've gone around to local businesses who've been very generous in donating items for our silent auction, as well as door prizes. We're going to also hand out letters, if you don't mind. If there's anyone here that might be interested in supporting the silent auction or door prizes, we'll hand the letters out, as well. Bonnie's going to hand out the flyer on the trivia night for the information. As well, we'll have a cash bar, 50-50 draw, pizza and snacks, door prizes, and first and second prize as well. Tables will be set at 10, so if you have teams that you want to submit, you can bring 10. If you can't fill a table at 10, 8 is fine. We'll sell tickets for couples and for singles, and we can just put everybody together. And doors are going to be opening at 6 o'clock. Trivia will start at 7 o'clock. So at 6 o'clock, all the items for the silent auction will be there for people to come in ahead of time, and then trivia will start at 7. We're holding it at the Delphi Hall, Banquet Hall number 1 on Portage Road. Tickets we're selling for $20, which will include your pizza and snacks, door prizes, of course, first and second prize. I'm challenging y'all here to see if you want to get together family members, co-workers, friends, and get teams together and see who has the smartest team. So if there's anyone here that's interested in tickets, my phone number will be on the forms we just gave out if you want to get in touch with me to purchase a table. Is there anyone here that wants to challenge any other?
Well, let me, just before we put that out there, a couple of councilors did want to offer comment. So we'll start Councilor Wing and then Councilor Iannone. Oh, no?
Yes, I would actually move that City Council participate by putting in a team like we do with bowling tournaments for other organizations. I remember doing a trivia night once before, and it was a lot of fun doing it. Also, I just wanted to note that the spay-neuter clinic is such a worthy endeavor. This isn't something that we're going to have to raise money for year after year. It will really reduce the number of animals requiring sheltering in the future. It'll reduce the costs of operating the shelter. It'll reduce the suffering. It'll reduce the need for euthanasia. It's something that communities are really catching on to. You decrease the supply, increase the demand, and you don't have the big gap, which leads to really sad endings. So I'd encourage the community to offer silent auction donations. I actually posted a note on my website about it, and right away I got an offer from Charlie Vandersloot offering photography.
Very nice.
So it's. People understand the need, and we really encourage silent auction donations and participants, and I will move that council put in a team.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gates. So it looks like we do have a challenge. I'm going to call the vote in a minute. And did you want to include a silent auction prize from the city as well, Councillor Wang? Okay, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Looks like you have a challenge.
Awesome.
I hear some dueling banjos in the background. Just don't set the bar too high. Don't expect too much. Yes.
Multiple choice.
Multiple choice. Thank you. From the clerk. Excuse me. How many on the team did you say?
We have tables of 10.
Tables of 10, so we could actually get the clerk on our team too. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
That'll be very helpful. Now, I understand we've already got, some of the councilors have already got their $20, so maybe if we could ask Councillor Wing if she would be our collection person.
Okay.
We can give our donations to Councillor Wing.
Awesome.
And you can put a table aside
Okay.
and put that out there. If that helps you to bring in some extra people that would like to beat the council, then I think it's a good thing.
We're selling oops tickets as well, so that if you think you can use one oops ticket per round, that if you think you have an answer that's wrong, you can put an oops ticket on there and you automatically get it right.
How many rounds?
I believe we're doing 6 rounds. I have to confirm it. You can only have 5. You have one less ticket per oops ticket per for the rounds. So if there's 8 rounds, you'll have 7 oops.
Save you time, just give us an oops stamp, and we'll use that, yeah. So are there any other comments for our friends from the Humane Society? And great point, Councillor Wing, too, because spay-neuter program has an exponential benefit because, with continuous litters, having continuous litters, it grows exponentially, and if we can stop that, it has a huge benefit long-term.
Yes.
All right, looks like you've got your challenge. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
We'll
very
look forward
much.
to the challenge. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up on deputations, we have Steps for Life. We'd ask Sharon Pye to speak up, committee chair, and she will inform us about their upcoming fundraiser. Welcome.
Thank you. Threads of Life defines a workplace as a fatality, a life-altering injury, or an occupational illness. Good evening. My name is Sharon Pye, and I'm a volunteer for Threads of Life. On behalf of myself and our Steps for Life team, I would like to thank you for inviting us here this evening. This organization was founded in 2003 by family members trying to live with the outcome of a workplace tragedy. Threads of Life is a charitable national organization created to fill a major gap in our country's health, safety, and social systems. For almost every other life-altering situation, there's a place to go. If you have cancer, you can go to the Cancer Society. If you have a heart attack, you can get help and support from the Heart and Stroke Foundation. Think about the impact to your family if someone was killed or injured on the job. Before 2003, there was no other organization available. Threads of Life now provides this vital support. Our vision is to lead, reform, and establish new standards of awareness under which work-related injuries and illnesses are morally, socially, and economically unacceptable. We need a culture shift. Most importantly, Threads of Life is a place where people can turn to help find the cure. The cure is prevention. Trust me, no one wants to join this organization, but for families living with the outcome of workplace tragedies, Threads of Life is able to provide an experienced, compassionate listener and provide referrals to community resources by someone who has been there. In order for Threads of Life to provide for families, we hold a Steps for Life walk. Steps for Life is a walk to raise safety awareness and is held the first Sunday in May to coincide with the North American Occupational Safety and Health Week. It is a unique opportunity for families to join together with health and safety partners and corporate leaders in their community to draw attention to the importance of injury prevention in a fun and positive environment. It is also an opportunity for families to honor their loved one. For families, by walking to raise awareness of injury prevention in their own community, to raise awareness within communities about the devastating ripple effect of workplace tragedy, to provide families with an opportunity to take positive action as part of their healing process by walking to raise the awareness of injury prevention in their community, to raise funds to support programs for families of workplace tragedy, to bring together health and safety partners to support victims of workplace tragedy, and to support corporate governance of those committed to injury prevention. Our programs include training family members who wish to offer one-on-one peer support to other families affected by workplace tragedy, development of regional family forums and sending the families to those forums. We hold 3 in Canada, Quebec and Atlantic Canada, Western Canada, and Central Canada. Funds help the production of our quarterly newsletter, Threads. We distribute 1,200 copies across Canada. Funds also help our Speakers Bureau by training family members who want to share their personal testimony on the reality of the aftermath of a workplace tragedy and to raise awareness of injury prevention. Corporate participation can take many shapes. In addition to the ones listed here, if you are unable to donate financially, there are other ways of supporting Steps for Life. If you know someone who is suffering through a workplace tragedy, you can direct them to our organization. Contributions from a dress down day can be sent to, could go to Steps for Life. Or you could book a speaker from our Speakers Bureau for your next health and safety event or meeting, and they can give a personal testimony. Or perhaps publishing one of our articles in your newsletter or on your website. Sponsors can significantly offset the cost of organizing the event. The commitment of these corporate sponsors help to offset the cost for all Steps of Life walks. We have all levels of sponsorship, starting as low as $100. And I can tell you $100 provides resource materials to train a family member to become a volunteer family guide, offering one-on-one support, peer support. We can also create opportunities based on your company's marketing objectives. As you can see from the statistics, we have some pretty hopeful goals this year. I can remember our very first walk in Toronto held 8 years ago, and there were 40 participants, which consisted of family members and health and safety representatives. Last year, we held 28 walks across the country, and this year we have 37 walks in 9 provinces. The tremendous growth of Threads of Life has been mirrored by the increase in Steps of Life walks across the country. The need is real. Every year, significantly more family members and friends affected by workplace tragedy have found support through our organization because of this walk. Niagara's first walk was held last year, and we raised over $8,600 through the generous support and donations and sponsors who acknowledged the need. We have raised the bar this year, and it's $12,000. We are in need of sponsorships and donations if we are going to meet this goal. I'd like to give you a glimpse of some of the faces in our community that have lost their lives due to workplace fatalities. And this is just a few of the many lives affected by workplace fatalities, life-altering injuries, and occupational illnesses. Where one life is one too many. I hope this has raised your awareness and gave you some insight as to our organization. Safety is everyone's responsibility. Workplace tragedy plays no prejudice. I encourage each of you to join me or join us at Kingsbridge Park on May 1st at 10 a.m. I hope to see you there, and hope if you can't be there, maybe you can help sponsor someone that will be there. Be safe and God bless. I'd actually like to have Fred say a few words. His son's picture was the one that was the hockey player. So Fred?
Thank you, Sharon. Bruce, our son Bruce, was 22 years old when he passed away from a workplace injury. Lived his life in Niagara Falls. Played for the Niagara Falls Midget AAA team, then won the Ontario Minor Hockey Association Championship in 2001-2002. 2 years after standing up proud with the trophies for the city, he lost his life. I would ask if it would be possible if the council could make a proclamation that May the 1st as a Threads of Life Day to help make awareness within the city of the organization and the walk. I have information packages here for you, for each one of you, and we have an eraser here for each one that we hand out to children at different schools, or if we go out to talk, we'll hand them out to people that have children. It says, erase workplace injuries, work safe, Threads of Life, and it has the Threads of Life website on there, www.threadsoflife.ca. Just between you and I, Mr. Mayor, everybody else, please don't listen. Sharon's mayor from Welland has set a challenge to Wainfleet, Port Colborne, and Font Hill, to their mayors to come out to the walk and support the organization. But don't tell anybody. We would invite you to do the same if you would choose to, and show that our life in Niagara Falls and that the people in Niagara Falls are such a great city that they will support something like this, because there are many more people than Bruce that have lost their lives to workplace injuries in this city or from this city. Thank you.
We, first off, very sorry to hear about Bruce. Obviously, you're very passionate about this, and as a direct result, we've got a motion by Councillor Pietrangelo and a second by Councillor Wing that we are tonight going to proclaim May the 1st Threads of Life Day. Is there any discussion on that motion? Councillor Wing.
I'd just like to add in that our mayor participate and challenge the mayors of Thorold, St. Catharines, and Niagara-on-the-Lake as well.
Fort Erie too. Sorry.
And Fort Erie.
We'll send it out to anyone who hasn't already been challenged. Councillor Gates?
Thanks, Mayor Jerry Daddy. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the great work that you do. One of the hardest things that I had to do in my working life was to take a 39-year-old man out of one of our plants who was crushed to death. And what people don't realize, it's not just how hard it was just on the immediate family, it's everybody. It was his parents who, to this day, they go to Niagara-on-the-Lake, and on April 29th, the day of mourning, they do a lot of that kind of stuff. But the effect on the family, when somebody goes to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, they're expecting to see their spouse or their partner or their children come back at 5 o'clock or 5:30 when their day's done. You never expect to get out of bed in the morning and not get home. So heightening the awareness through your organization, I think you do just tremendous work, and if the mayor will walk in it, I would consider it an honor to walk with him.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gates. Are there any other comments? The commitment that I will make, I just checked my schedule right now. My middle daughter makes her first communion that morning at 11. So this walk is going to be, is it going to be at 10?
Registration is at 10. The walk usually starts about 11.
About 11? Okay. Well, one way or the
Join
other.
us for the barbecue.
The barbecue is, what time's the barbecue?
It'll be about 1.
At 1 o'clock, okay. Well, just like I say, but we will have representation from this council, you can count on that. And we've written the date down, we've proclaimed the day, and we appreciate everybody coming out. Did we vote on the motion already? Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Sharon, and everybody else, appreciate you coming out today.
You get more politicians if they call it walk and talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the erasers. It's a good reminder. Next up is mayor's reports and announcements. First off, I was fortunate enough to, yes, Councillor Iannoni.
Mr. Mayor, we have issues that we've brought from downstairs to upstairs, and some of those people have been here since 4 o'clock.
Yes.
Can we put them?
We're going to, actually, the clerk and I have discussed, and we're going to put them right at reports, which will just be in a couple of minutes. We're going to run through this very quickly. Thank you. First off, Niagara Concerts. I was able to attend the second final show of the season. We had a number of Cuban dancers and performers. It was absolutely incredible. Tickets are now on sale for next season's lineup. $95 for 5 shows for Niagara Concerts. I'd highly recommend it. The place is practically a sellout. It's exceptional entertainers, first-class talent. Encourage everyone to go to niagaraconcerts.ca, and when you see this year's lineup, they've got everyone from the Mancini sisters to Leahy, all at this year's show for $95 for the entire season. So definitely some good value. We're very proud to announce Winter Festival of Lights was named by Festivals and Events Ontario as one of the top 100 festivals. So congratulations to the Winter Festival of Lights. Thank you for the trumpets announcing that award. We're very happy. Sorry, Mr. CAO. Upcoming events, Chamber of Commerce Luncheon. The Chamber of Commerce has been kind enough to offer me an opportunity to speak at the State of the City, which will be this Thursday at noon at Club Italia. Tickets are still available. If you're interested, just call the Chamber of Commerce, and we'd be happy to have you there. We promise to make it interesting, entertaining, and not drag it on too long. As well, the regional chair's State of the Region address will be the following day, which will be this Friday, which will be held at White Oaks at noon, and that's hosted by the St. Catharines and Thorold Chambers of Commerce. We should talk briefly about the Junior B Canucks. They are in their series right now versus the Port Colborne Pirates. And for those of you that may not know, Port Colborne was down 3-0. Welland looked like they were about to take the series. Port Colborne came back and beat Welland. Well, as a result, the mayor of Welland at the next council meeting has to wear the Port Colborne Pirates jersey at council. They've had to fly the flag of Port Colborne at the City Hall in Welland. And of course, Mayor Badaway didn't waste any time extending the challenge to me. And of course, he called me out. I had no choice but to take the challenge. Happy to say we are tied at 1 game apiece right now. Both games went into overtime. The next game will be tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Encourage everyone to get out to the Gale Center. The house is full. We had 1,500 people there. I expect there to be closer to 2,000 for a lot of reasons. Number one, we want our team to win. Number two, we want to show support. Number three, I don't want to have to wear the Port Colborne jersey here in council. We've heightened it a little bit. I'll have to also, or the loser will have to wear it at regional council as well as fly the flag of Port Colborne. So Mayor Badaway, he's been talking trash talk, and matter of fact, he sent me another message just a little while ago tonight. He's having a lot of fun prodding me, and I'm not going to pretend I'm innocent, and I'm not feeding it back to him either. Anyway, I'm going to bring him some Kleenex tomorrow to our meeting for the series. So suggest everybody get out and let's cheer on our Canucks. And lastly, Optimist Youth Appreciation Awards. Congratulations to all the youth in our community for all of their efforts. We look forward to hearing about all the good work and all the recipients. We will have the awards handed out at our reception at the Optimist Club on Tuesday, March the 29th. Those conclude our announcements. We will just quickly run through our communications and comments, then we'll bring up the committee of the whole. First off, we've got Niagara Falls Optimist looking to approve March 20th to the 26th Youth Appreciation Week in the city. Looking at motion for Councilor Maves, seconded by Councilor Morocco. All those in favor? Item 2, Canadian Association of Nurses of Oncology are requesting April 5th as Canadian Oncology Nursing Day. Looking for a motion from Councilor Thompson, seconded by Councilor Wing. All those in favor? Item 3, Red Boss Pyrotechnics, request for firework display at the Great Wolf Lodge for various dates in the summer. We're looking for approval of council subject to appropriate insurance and coverage acceptable to the city. We're looking for a motion. Councilor Thompson, seconded by Councilor Carrio. All those in favor? Unanimous. And lastly, Downtown Board of Management is requesting an all-way stop at Queen Street and Chrysler. Recommendation is to refer to staff for a report. Motion by Councilor Carrio, seconded by Councilor Maves. All those in favor? Unanimous. And I ask the clerk if there are any additional items for consideration.
Your Worship, there isn't any additional communications, but there's a series of resolutions later on your agenda, and there's actually an additional resolution. 3 of those resolutions are actually related to council deeming different events in the community as community festivals, and I know there's some people in the audience, so it might be a good idea to maybe move those up and deal with them now since they're fairly straightforward. So basically, there's 3 events that we're asking council to designate as community festivals for liquor license purposes. So that's the Niagara Music and Arts Expo, which has been downtown. You've already passed a resolution on this, but they've extended the event for an additional week. The Rotary Club for their annual Sunrise Rib Fest, which happens every summer in June. And then the additional one this evening is related to the upcoming opening of the Scotiabank Convention Center. They're hoping to have their liquor license in place by the April grand opening, but if they don't, to cover themselves as a contingency, they're applying for a special occasions permit. So I would suggest the council can deal with all 3 of those at once.
Okay, Councilor Morocco and Councilor Thompson.
I'll make a motion, Your Worship, to pass all 3.
Okay. Okay, so we've got a motion by Councilor Morocco, seconded by Councilor Thompson to move all 3 resolutions. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And now to move forward on some unfinished business from downstairs. Our meeting went longer than planned. The item that we are working on right now is report HR 2011-02, Fire Department Full-Time Recruitment. And we did already start the discussion downstairs. And we do have some people in the gallery that did want to speak to the matter. Just before we do, if maybe I could ask that our HR director just kind of give us a summary of where we are from downstairs, and then we'll move forward with the discussion.
Mr. Mayor, this is the report that was deferred at the last council meeting, and according to council's direction, we're making some specific changes and recommendations, amendments to the full-time firefighting recruitment process. And we're at the stage in the report where we're hoping to do is offer or give first preference consideration to qualified Niagara Falls residents and volunteer firefighters. All the other mandatory qualifications, including rock testing with main and device. And we are suggesting a higher educational threshold. However, instead of high school, we're looking for a certificate diploma and in fire-related courses, or as a substitute for volunteer firefighting, 3 years related experience with the Niagara Falls Fire Department. So that's the recommendations for you, and answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dark. Councilor Thompson.
Well, we had about an hour and a half discussion downstairs before we got up here about the same matter, and there was a deputation that wished to speak. I think be appropriate to hear them, and then we can continue our dialogue and debate after that. So I would move that we permit them to speak.
Okay, we can bring them forward. Was there any other questions right now before we do that? Everybody satisfied? You're right, we did have an exhaustive discussion downstairs. First off, who do we have in the gallery that would like to address the council? What's that? Okay, we'll take the motion, I'm sorry, from Councilor Thompson, second by Councilor Morocco. All those in favor? Okay. So, Mr. Brunel, if you could just state your name and...
My name is Todd Bruning, President of the Niagara Falls Professional Firefighters Association. So I'd like to thank Mr. Mayor and Council for allowing us to come here tonight and ask some questions or raise some concerns with this. First and foremost, I'd like to stress and can't stress enough that the Niagara Falls Professional Firefighters Association fully supports what you're trying to do through this by creating an advantage for volunteer firefighters and city residents. We support that. However, we just don't want this policy to compromise the hiring of the best, if you will. Under point 1 on it, the mandatory qualifications, a couple points I would just like to make where we've now added, or it's being proposed to be added in to include additional, or to include an educational requirement and minimum post-secondary diploma certificate in fire-related courses. Over the past number of years, we've hired paramedics, police officers, military personnel, and full-time firefighters from other municipalities. By having this mandatory qualification in there may exclude some of these people that come to us that have been a huge asset to both the fire department and the city with the skills they brought forward. However, if a paramedic went to college for a paramedic course, or a police officer took policing, although they have skills that would benefit the fire department in this city, by having this mandatory qualification of post-secondary diploma or certificate in a fire-related course, and they weren't a volunteer firefighter with this municipality or another, that may restrict them from applying, and again, lessening our talent pool. A couple other things with it is that it's being offered to city volunteers and residents first and foremost, before it's going to the region and beyond. By all means, we would like to recommend or ask that you would consider that if a volunteer firefighter or city resident passed the Brock test, met the mandatory qualifications, that they be granted a first interview. But at the same time that everyone else is getting considered for interviews, whether they live in the city, the region, or beyond. I know downstairs a couple of questions were asked, how many people we've lost to other municipalities that have been hired here. The chief reported that we had 3. I can tell you that third individual was left here in his first week of recruit training because he hadn't fully resigned or quit from the full-time fire department we hired him from. So he had a choice to make, that he had to pick one or the other. So we've actually only lost 2 firefighters in the last 10 years. But we've taken from 7 different municipalities, 9 full-time, fully trained firefighters. So I think, like the chief had pointed out, the numbers are really in favor of this city. Our recruitment classes have been lately, in 2003 we hired 9. In 2004 it was another 9. 2006 was 11. 2007 was 16. 2009 was 8. And this year here, on February 28th, the 9 recruits that started, there was 9 of them for 2011's recruitment. So we're talking large numbers, or the numbers are getting, some years a little larger than others. We have a lot of retirements coming up. I think if we're just restricting it to within the city with the volunteers or the residents right now, we might be missing out on a larger talent pool. And those are some of the considerations I'd like to make. Out of the last 6 recruitment drives, there has been a volunteer and or city residents in every recruitment. So it's not like they're being overlooked by any means. We just feel that, like it was pointed out, that the city of St. Catharines used to have something similar in place. They got away from it because they realized the restriction it was putting on their talent pool and everything else they needed to pull from outside. Also, the way this is currently written is what happens if you have individuals that didn't get hired here by the city of Niagara Falls and got hired on by another fire department, another municipality, had to move away, but really their heart's still here and wants to come back here. The way this is written, we won't be giving them a consideration until down in point 5, when we've exhausted the city and volunteer residents. We've granted them second interviews, we've sent them for medical examinations, and made offers of employment. That's the way this is written now. And I'll tell you, there has been firefighters that have left this city who tried to get apply here have left, gone to other municipalities, and have come back. There's also been people from within the region that have come back. So the city of Niagara Falls, to me, and you can ask a firefighter from every municipality I work for, they're going to tell you it's the best fire department. But I'd like to make the point that I believe the city of Niagara Falls is the best fire department in the region, if not, beyond, because we're a diverse fire department. We offer a lot of different disciplines. We're into high-angle rescue, we're into confined space, we're hazmat, we're swift water, things like we have the gorge set up, and that's unique to this fire department. If you take an individual that's in the region and he looks at that and he says, you know what fire department would I like to apply for? That one really interests me because we do more disciplines. It's a dynamic fire department. It's a progressive fire department. That's the one. They live outside of this city or not a volunteer in the city, they won't be considered till step 4 or 5. And what that may do is not consider them at all if you're saying that we've made first interviews, second interviews, and we've made medical examinations and job offers to the residents of Niagara Falls and the volunteers. So again, I'd like to stress that it's not that we're opposed to giving advantage to city residents or the volunteers of Niagara Falls. We just want to still maintain, like we currently do, hiring the best of the best. So there's a process in place now that's giving an advantage to volunteers and city residents now. I think that we could stay with that or add to it a little bit, but I think that the way this current policy is written, even if you go to page 3 on the back side, on the graph, it doesn't bring you in until step 5 of 7. So the layout has, in my opinion, has shrunk the talent pool that this city can pull from and the resources available to them in a way if we leave it written. And I believe Councillor Gates said downstairs that he believes that we should just do the interviews once, and I fully support that. But I think it's a great way to do it once. Look at all applicants that have come forward. If you have 2 applicants that are even, you have one from out of town and one in Niagara Falls, they're absolutely even, by all means, give that to that resident of Niagara Falls or that volunteer of Niagara Falls. But if they're not, if you don't allow that other opportunity or that other person to come in and show you and sell themselves or show you what they have to offer this city, I think that we're restricting our talent pool. So.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Any questions for Mr. Brunning? Yeah, Councillor Carrio.
I have one question, Todd.
Sure.
So when you say you take the 2 people, you have a person from Niagara Falls, and then you have a pool which might draw, I don't know how many hundreds of people from other places. And at what point do you decide that there's a firefighter that's applying from Niagara Falls that's perfectly qualified? We'd be more than happy to have him as our firefighter. But you may have people that are applying from Manitoba or whatever, whose qualifications are a little bit better educated. Maybe he scored just a little bit better on that fitness test. But the guy from Niagara Falls then doesn't get hired. So how do we, I'm not suggesting that we would hire anyone that can't do the job. I'm saying that the guy from Niagara Falls is absolutely acceptable candidate. But he may not be. See, this best of the best thing is what's getting me. Because if the person is qualified to be a firefighter, then he's from Niagara Falls, but we're going to strictly hire the absolute best, and we're drawing from the whole country. You're certainly putting the people from Niagara Falls at a disadvantage. So how do we get around that? Or how do we still help our Niagara Falls people and get around that? Because if we do that, what you're suggesting, I still think the Niagara Falls people don't have much of a chance.
Well, I believe there's a process in place already that the way we currently hire, they get an advantage if they're a Niagara Falls volunteer or a Niagara Falls resident. So they've already got the leg up on that person from somewhere else. The qualifications, though, it's still, I would think that the city would want to hire the best of the best people for that job. There's an individual that's hired in this last recruitment who used to be a Niagara Falls resident. He had to move west. He was a full-time firefighter out west in Alberta, but his heart was here. He's back here now. If we restrict it to just the city, you might not get that guy. You might not get the other ones that have gone to Toronto, Mississauga, Vaughan, Brampton, Owen Sound, and then want to come back here because this is where they're from, this is where they want to be. And they're fully trained. They may be the best of the best. You're bringing them back.
Councillor Carroll, okay. Councillor Iannoni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Brunning, my problem is with the best of the best too. Because I think that if you are that candidate that Councillor Carrio says, the 2 examples they gave, and one might have a course that scores them higher, or maybe a little bit more hands-on. I am going to, as a council here, expect your trainers to mold that person who is a few points shorter than Buddy B to create us the best of the best. Because I looked at the bunch of you sitting downstairs, and I understand that you guys consider yourselves, and we consider you the best of the best. But that took you, the training here, and your experience here, and your experience with your fellow firefighters to help create you. I don't understand why there is such a problem with this report and us saying if they meet those same requirements, physical, Brock testing, and it's down to the matter of you have a little bit more night courses here than Buddy who lives here but has met all the requirements, that we can't trust you or your trainers or your department to create that person into the best of the best, because they created you into the best of the best. So that's the trust we're putting into your fire service. I don't ever expect our HR people to put through somebody that they do not believe, and if I understand correctly, you have a deputy and an HR professional in those interviews. I'm pretty certain they have the experience to say, I think you can become one of us, and I think we can train you to be one of us. I think they very clearly can see you are just not going to fit in here, and you cannot possibly have that happen. I got to trust you guys, because you're going to mold these kids too. Kids, adults, I shouldn't say that, because I know that grown men leave other professions to come to this. I'm going to trust you to do that. And I'm going to trust our H staff to do that based on the report before us. And that's all I can say. You are not the best of the best when you get here. You look the best on paper, but you're the best of the best once you put everything you learn here to the test. And that's all I'm saying to you.
And I appreciate that, Councilor Iannoni. But I'll give you this. I'm one of those examples of the people that tried to apply here, couldn't get hired here, had to go elsewhere. I applied here in 1998.
To that point, you are making my exact argument for me. I don't think you were any worse when you applied here than you were when you got hired.
We should have hired you then.
We should have hired you then. If we have recruits that applied for this last recruitment that didn't make it through here but are now hired in St. Catharines through this same time limit, I'm having a hard time buying. They are the best of the best for St. Catharines, but they weren't the best of the best for us. And that's you're making my argument for me. I don't want you to think I'm being rude, but we should have hired you in the first place.
Well,
Just before you jump, I think if you take a look at our policy, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're saying is that under the policy that we're going to approve today, if we did, you would not have been able to even come back to Niagara Falls, because you're not from Niagara Falls. I believe you're from Stevensville, which puts them outside the policy. I think that's what you're
correct.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. So you're going to limit the amount of people that have the skills that can apply here by accepting this. So one of the other questions I would like, and I don't know how you go about this, Mr. Mayor, is there anybody on City Council that would have a conflict of interest with this report if we're hiring from city volunteers? I don't know how we go about that, or.
Well, typically, a conflict of interest, I'm looking to you, Mr. Solicitor, to comment. Yeah, I saw you looking down, but I'm deferring to you.
Well, conflicts of interest are matters that each individual councillor looks after for themselves, and we have all of our councillors announce and we go through all the matters of pecuniary interest that they spot on the agenda. And by and large, I think the citizens of Niagara Falls have seen that the councillors here are very careful about conflicts of interest. Councillor Carrio just very carefully noted the possibility of a conflict of interest in the matter involving the people mover, which was even discussed in camera. And so he made absolutely certain that everybody knew that he was aware that there might be some perception of conflict of interest there. Councillor Peter Angelo, when matters involve the school board, he's very careful in making sure that's noted. Councillor Morocco, just at the very start, noted the check made out to her spouse. So these things are matters that in Niagara Falls, and all municipalities are left to the individual councillors to resolve. Sometimes they seek legal advice about particular ones that are a little more complicated, but that's the system we have in Niagara Falls, which is the system which is used in every municipality that I'm aware of, and it seems to work just fine.
So, in other words, I guess to answer your question, he's saying it's up to the individual counselor to declare if they believe they have a conflict.
We
Is
don't
that
have
right?
counselors hunting each other to declare that the person across the room has a conflict, nor do we have staff running around hunting to allege conflicts of interest. Whether the citizens of Niagara Falls have elected people of honor, and we see every time you people meet that honor at work when the conflicts are recognized.
Thank you. I couldn't make eye contact with him before, now he won't stop. We've got Councillor Thompson, Councillor Morocco, Councillor Ioannoni.
Well, you know, when I sat in the chair up there, I was constantly asked by people in the community, how come you never hire anybody for the fire department from Niagara Falls? We just heard that there were 9 people hired. There was 1 from the city of Niagara Falls. I think that's all we're trying to accomplish here, to make sure that, like many other municipalities, the tie goes to the Niagara Falls runner. And I'm hoping that there's a lot of common sense involved in this situation, that we're not going to hire somebody who is deficient in any way compared to other people who are applying with the applying for the fire department. So I don't know what all of the problem is. You were in '98?
I applied in '98 and 2000, was until 2003.
See, that was probably my fault. See, we should have hired you at the time. Anyway, if he's suggesting, or anybody's suggesting, that somebody who is from this city, has their roots in this community, have to move away and become qualified someplace else, or even within the region, I don't have a problem with the region, but apply back here after they've been here, their family is here, their community interests are here, I would think that would be an automatic, that they would be considered, and I wouldn't think that I would not be in favor of them being restricted in that particular situation. So I think this is just common sense, trying to give a boost to the local community, that there's an opportunity for employment in probably what is considered one of the premier jobs in, for young people today with the fire department. So, regarding the conflict, I don't think I have a conflict. My father was the chief, my brother worked there, my nephew works there at the fire department, and it's a great job, and I lived all through that all my days in growing up. And I think that if there's an opportunity for this council to give an edge to making sure the best of the best are being looked at, and they are here. I see them, I've interviewed them, I've talked to them, I've had them harass me about why we can't get a job here. And I tell you, they're tremendous athletes, they're bright, a lot of them have even university education, plus their fire training. I keep hearing that, well, we hired a policeman. I don't know what a policeman would, what assets they would have to be a fireman. They'd have to start from scratch anyway. I would pick somebody who has had their Brock training and their training from the college over a police officer. What's a police officer? Somebody with EMS. Somebody with EMS. I might get one now. With EMS training certainly would be an asset. And so I don't know what the big problem is. We're just trying to give a nod to the people who are paying their taxes in this community. Their family roots are here, and I don't have a problem with that at all, because I know that a lot of the best are going to be right here. And when I hear 9 people are hired, and 1 was from Niagara Falls, that concerns me.
Now, Councillor Thompson, if I hear what you're saying, a situation such as Mr. Brunning's, where he's, or someone that's from Niagara Falls that's taken a job with another fire service, you're saying you think they should be part of that mix of city residents, firefighters, or, so you're adding?
Absolutely, I have no problem with it.
Okay.
In fact, I think that's absolutely a requirement, in my opinion.
Okay. Councillor Morocco?
May I just respond?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, please.
Yeah, out of those 9, you're right, there was only 1 from Niagara Falls.
I know,
There was
I know.
1 individual that left, had to go out west, be hired, and wanted to come back. He was still here. You mentioned that that common sense. would bring that person, if their roots are here and they want to come back. However, that's not what this policy says. This policy specifically outlines how you're going to hire it. It has the stages you're going to hire it. It makes no mention to the common sense part of it in here. A police officer, to answer that question, still has to go through Brock testing like everyone else. And what they can offer is conflict resolution. You move a police officer into the fire prevention division, their interview skills and investigation skills and everything else. So these are, it's not just putting out fires anymore. The fire service offers a wide variety of services. So police officers and paramedics and military personnel and full-time firefighters all play an important role and are a huge asset to the fire department.
Yep, absolutely. They add to the depth of the fire department. We've got Councillor Morocco, then Councillor Iannoni.
Well, just if we're going to have somebody up there debating every question and every comment that's made, then there should be opportunity for rebuttal.
Okay, well, go ahead if you have a rebuttal.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Tell me how a police officer hired on the fire department is going to be better than somebody who has been a volunteer, has gone through their education at the college. That police officer has to go through the same kind of training that the other individual has.
I don't believe
you're talking about his ability to interview, and is he in the fire inspection already? Is that what you're talking about?
No, but we have to keep daily duty books, and that's the job of a police officer. Also, we're expected to keep a daily log of our activities, the calls we run on.
Well, I
there
hope
are
if
times that we
somebody,
have
I
to
hope if
question.
somebody has been to college and is able to keep a log of what their activities are.
Well, maybe we can get
I think we're
the
getting
chief,
off the
maybe,
track here.
Chief, if you wanted to just respond and jump in.
Your Worship, just in reference to police officers, we did hire a police officer, but the police officer was also a volunteer firefighter with the City of Niagara Falls, and he's worked out very well for us with all the experience that he brought to the table.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, Mr. Budding, because the council are going to discuss this among ourselves, is there anything, so have you been able to address your major
Yes.
issues?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you very much for allowing us to.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Morocco.
Thank you, Your Worship. As I stated downstairs, I have a little bit of a problem being able to accept this because it does look like we're almost discriminating on anyone from outside allowing to apply for the position. And I basically have to say I agree with everyone around this table. I think that we do have great volunteers and residents that can qualify quite appropriately. But with that being said, and I'll repeat exactly what I said downstairs, is I think that our HR department is fully capable of setting the criteria. As I heard downstairs how they set in its weight, their weight process, is that if there's 3 individuals that actually score exactly the same across, and I don't care where they are, that they're just even. The next process of their weight in would be if they're local residents and if they volunteered. So then those factors play a part. And I think that's important because everybody wants to make sure that you hire the most qualified individual. And then given that weight that they are local and they have volunteered, I think the process and the way that it's been going now, I seem to be quite okay with the way that they're doing it. And that way we're not really shutting the door on such as the young man that's standing there, Todd, to come back and have an opportunity to get him back in our city after he's being trained, and he is from here. So it does kind of play on what Councillor Thompson said, is that, you know, we do get them back here, their families are here, so I'd hate to shut that door and not have them come back because we lost them to another area. So with that being said, I really can't support this recommendation until I would have some legal advice from our legal department in regards to, does that mean we're discriminating towards other people from applying? So if I can have that asked.
Okay. We've got Councillor Iannoni, Maves, and then Wing. Councillor Iannoni?
Put me down for discriminating, please.
I need to have somebody explain.
So at that point, I wasn't saying that he was discriminating. I just said I wouldn't want us to see, and I would like legal advice on that.
I think the solicitor made it clear that we're going to have part of this discussion in camera. So, I'm sorry, Councillor Iannoni.
So then are we deferring?
No, right now we're having debate on the report that's before us. Councillor Iannoni.
I need somebody to explain to me how, if you post a position from within and you don't get the internal candidate that you think is the best of the best, and I'll use the example, we posted from within with our CAO, we hired from outside. How do we look at, how is posting from within first, not finding enough qualified, and then posting outside, any different or discriminatory than how we do it now? I'm really confused on this, because I think it's down to simplified. You post from within. If people do not meet this qualification, you post outside. I don't think whether you live here or not is the overwhelming bearing. The overwhelming bearing is, are you qualified? So you want them qualified no matter where they live. Tell me the difference between the two.
Fair enough. Councillor Mays.
Can someone tell us?
Well, you want to know the difference?
Yeah.
Well, I guess.
HR?
Yeah, okay, well, the chief and/or the clerk and/or the janitor, who wants to answer this one?
Well, that would be part of what would be addressed in camera.
Okay, so don't go there right now, is that what you're saying?
Well, that is one of the issues that would have to be analyzed from a legal perspective.
Okay, Councillor Ioannoni.
Do we have a policy that says hire within?
Yes.
Okay, so we do, because I remember we all sat on it and we passed it. So if we post internally now, are we discriminating to people outside that may be qualified?
Well, let me just
to
get
do the job?
clarification from our Director of HR. Do we have a current policy of first within?
Our practice is definitely to hire within when everyone's relatively equal.
So is that a practice or a policy?
That's the policy.
We had a policy with respect to that. It was passed when I was there.
Okay, okay, so it's certainly the practice and perhaps it was the policy as well. Councillor Ioannoni?
Okay, so if our policy practice, if you've done it for a long time, it becomes your standard. If our standard is to post within and hire from within if they're qualified and throw the net out if they're not, how does what we're looking to do now change the current policy that we practice now? Because I don't understand it.
Okay, we're going to ask the chief just to weigh in.
Your worship, just on what qualifies a person when we're looking what the difference is between having the applicants in a separate pool and then going to another stage as opposed to having them all in the same pool, is that the qualifications are set by the applicants generally. Because our minimum qualifications are there, the people that come in bring with them many different qualifications, and depending on their individual talent, but collectively that group of talent, that sets a stage for what the I guess the benchmark or the bar is for people to have to meet.
Okay. Does that...
Mr. Mayor, that pretty much meets the standard of any position that we fill. So I'm not certain what we would be doing any different with this policy than we are with the policy that we already practice.
Okay.
Except perhaps viewing our volunteers as part of our employee pool, I think our HR called it.
We're going to get the HR director to step up, please, Mr. Dark, and then I'm going to ask the CAO maybe to jump in too.
Mayor, I think the difference is that I think the councillor is referring to the volunteer firefighters and qualifications for full-time hires in full-time departments different than the qualifications that we use for the volunteer firefighters. So there is a difference between the qualifications for volunteer firefighters and full-time. That might be the decision, that might be the solution.
Okay. And the CAO, would ask him just to maybe...
I just think, Mr. Mayor, to help that out, I think what we've had as a past practice here, we've had really two different standards. We've had one standard where we've had a hire within for probably all departments except fire. So fire traditionally has been dealt with differently because I don't recall us ever having a policy in place where we would automatically go to the volunteers first. So even though we might have been doing that with our QP and our inside-outside employees, our management staff, which might be the practice for that group, we've never had a standing practice for that for fire. So within the corporation, we quite obviously have two different methods of hiring and two different standards that we've applied over the years. So I don't know if that helps you, Councillor, but that has been the long-standing practice of We've never done that where we've gone to the volunteers first. So that would actually be a change in our current practice.
Okay, Councillor Maves.
Yeah, Your Worship, I'm just looking at, this is the first draft of this, and I'm just thinking, through the discussion tonight, Councillor Wing mentioned we should change the word, put in professional in the one area. I think the other thing is possibly in number 5, we can tweak that and say that former residents could also apply and whatnot. So I think basically the principle is there, it's just a matter of tweaking the wording, and perhaps maybe we should defer this and maybe add in some of those things and possibly get our legal opinion from our solicitor, and I think that would probably be the best thing to do in this particular instance. And if that's the case, I would move for deferral.
Yeah, maybe just a suggestion, maybe, yeah, motion for referral so we can still discuss this. I mean,
I'll do that, thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna, pardon me? I'm gonna ask the CAO is going to try to encapsulate where we're at right now.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, and just
what's that?
Perhaps to get a little further direction, and maybe I just preface by, staff was asked to come back with a report after the last round of hiring, which happened around February of this year. So we were asked to come back with a report. Now, at one end of the spectrum, we have the current practice, which does give preference to locals, whether it be a volunteer or a resident of Niagara Falls, with some points. And I think the HR director indicated it was about 15% that they could score extra points on. We came with a report on February 28th suggesting an enhancement of that pointing, where we would perhaps double up those points, maybe even give up to, say, 30% more or 20% more, but give that local volunteer or resident a little bit more of a leg up, but you would still go through a process where you were looking at everybody that applied, from not only locals, but regional people and people from across the province and Canada, for that matter. The report that night was deferred by council, and you asked us to come back with a little bit more strict view on that. And that's the report that you have today. Now, that report really takes it one step further, where it says before we even look at anybody else beyond the Niagara Falls borders, we're going to completely exhaust a process where we look at Niagara Falls residents, whether you're a volunteer or just a resident with some other experience first. So that's really the spectrum of what we're talking about here. And you know, I believe there's a solution in the middle there somewhere if we need to get there with all the comments tonight. But I think really what you're telling us is that you want an opportunity to have our local residents viewed in a higher light in the process, to have first preference given to them, all things being equal, before we would look outside. But at the same time, I'm hearing certain councillors saying we don't want to exclude that outside opportunity to prevent gentlemen like Mr. Bruning to be able to go out and come back and perhaps compete here as well. So I think if you leave that to us, we can perhaps come back with something, Mr. Mayor. But I get the sense that, you know, somewhere in the middle of this report, hearing what the association said, the feedback from councillors, that it may not be going as far as we talked about in the report tonight, but maybe there's some other middle ground that we can find that's something similar in a little bit of expanded form to what we presented to you on February the 28th. And that would still be giving that local resident a leg up, and all things being equal, they would score more points because of residency and volunteering in the community. But at the same time, we wouldn't be excluding that look outside concurrently as we're looking at our internal people or our local people.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good. I've got a number of speakers. Thank you very much to our CAO. So what he's suggesting is if we don't resolve this exactly the way we want it, staff, I think they've heard us. They've got a real good idea how to fine tune this to bring it forward. No question this started because we want to help our volunteer firefighter situation by encouraging people to want to become volunteer firefighters, by giving a clear path to becoming a career firefighter, more direct through becoming a volunteer firefighter, which will help our areas where we need more recruitment. At the same time, we don't want to have a lower common denominator of the talent, which it's been said here, we've got a lot of talent here right within our ranks, and obviously the minimum is if you don't get through the minimum standards, you don't have an opportunity to even get interviewed.
So we've got a few more speakers before we maybe send this back to staff. Right now, I've got Councillor Wing, Councillor Morocco, Councillor Gates. Is there anyone else that wants to? And Councillor Carrion and Councillor Peter Angelo. Okay, Councillor Wing.
Thank you. And I agree with Mr. Todd that the solution is there somewhere in the middle. We just haven't quite found our way to it yet. I wanted to address the benchmark or bar, the mandatory qualifications, as Councillor Maves noted already. I think we need to, after the requirement for at least 3 years of volunteer experience, put volunteer and or professional. I'd also suggest that the post-secondary diploma certificate in fire-related courses be perhaps and or EMS, because I know that a great deal of what the fire services do these days is more EMS related. So I think that would be an excellent change as well. And I don't see the police investigation stuff being overly relevant, because there's a lot of other professions that require investigation as well. There's insurance investigators, and there's lots of investigations in other fields as well. As far as the concern about discriminating or shrinking our pool too much, I know some of my colleagues were really concerned about the fact that there's 2 rounds of interviews, and if you don't live in Niagara Falls, then you don't have a crack at being in that first round. Maybe that's where an adjustment could be made. Is we could change, let's say, .4, so that we do our second interviews of outside candidates after we've dealt with the Niagara Falls or volunteer candidates. Maybe we really do need to look at interviewing, giving everybody first interviews as long as they meet the minimum qualifications, and don't offer second interviews to anybody else who lives outside of Niagara Falls until we've given those second interviews to candidates from within Niagara Falls who we think merit those second interviews. So that's just a suggestion, but I would really like staff to have more time to think about this, and I'd appreciate that as well.
Okay, I see staff are feverishly writing away. Councillor Gates.
Thanks very much, Mayor Diodati. First of all, to the professional firefighters, I think you made it very clear, and I think it's important for the council to understand and staff to understand, is that you don't have a problem with hiring local, because that's what this is about. I think the council has really taken a big step here on saying, how do we hire local young people that can get a job that's extremely well paid, and I don't think anybody will ever say anything bad about a firefighter. So I think we've done the job. The problem that I feel that we have is that we're saying these are the points. I think Mr. Todd hit it right on the nail. The points here have to be redone. Councillor Wing's point, number 5 has to be moved. You have to have one interview. I think that makes the most sense. I think that's one that I think we should do, and I know other municipalities do it. The other thing that I think has to be addressed here is that we are spending a fair amount of tax dollars from the residents of Niagara Falls for our volunteer firefighters. So what we have to do is find a way that it's going to make sure that our volunteer firefighters are the best of the best. And how do you get there? By spending tax dollars. I think we've taken that step by hiring somebody to train. I think that you can get more training in Chippewa and say to them, listen, if you really want to be a firefighter as a career, this is what we can offer you as a city. We can offer you more training. We can offer you a little better training, so that when you go and do the test, you are right there. You're right there. It's something like an apprenticeship program, where you have your 4 years apprenticeship program, and when you're done your apprenticeship, you know that you're the best of the best when it comes to being a skilled tradesperson. And I think that's what we have to take a look at through staff and say, how are we spending the tax dollars to the best interests of the residents of Niagara Falls, trying to find a way to get local people hired as firefighters, which is a very good career, it's well-paying, well-respected in the community. And I think that's what I like to see. And I think it was too restrictive on the points that we have to this point. But to Mr. Todd's point, I think he hit it right on the nail. I think that's exactly what we should do. Go back, take another look at it. You've listened to all the councillors here. I think this has been a great debate, quite frankly. I'm really glad it was brought upstairs so the residents that tune into Cable 10 can listen to this. It's an important part of our community, and I think we got a good way to make it better for everybody. So I thank you for your time, and to professional firefighters, I appreciate you coming today and educating us as well.
Thank you. Councilor Morocco.
Well, I think pretty much has been said, and the passion is all around the table. And thank you, Ken, for really bringing it to light. We all want to make sure, at the end of the day, that we are giving our first preference to our local people and our volunteers. That's it. And I think that we just want to, this maybe just kind of went out of those perimeters or maybe just locked it down too tight. So I'd like to take it back to Ken and say, yes, bring it back. And I think really what we're saying is just maybe give a little bit more weight to the local residents and to our volunteers. That's it. That's all we want.
Okay. Councilor Kerrio.
Thank you, Worship. I think that the one thing that we have to address also is something that the chief was talking about. He was talking about how that we've hired in the past, we've taken to get the level, one of the councilors asked to get the level of the qualifications. The chief said, well, that would come from the pool. So if we were advertising for firefighters and we had 300 applicants, and then you look at that pool, and that pool is going to set the level. Well, guys, if you open this up across the country, and you're going to, every time we hire, you're going to open it up to the pool, how often do you think that the one or two guys from Niagara Falls are going to be the best in the pool? I think the fundamental difference is, are we going to do it that way, or are we going to determine what's an acceptable qualification for someone to be a firefighter in Niagara Falls, and then weight it that way, somehow, not cutting everyone else out, but so they have a real chance. Because then if you go by what Mr. Todd said, if you go by everything being equal, we hire the guy from Niagara Falls. But if you take that into consideration what the chief said and what Mr. Todd said, it's not ever going to be equal, because you're going to pull from 1,000 people and you're going to get guys with degrees and everything you can think of that would obviously add some depth to our fire department. But I think it would also be eliminating the guy from Niagara Falls. And is that what we really need? We need a good firefighter capable of doing the job, absolutely qualified. But if you open it up to a huge pool, I think that's when the guys from Niagara Falls have a tough time getting in, because they're gonna, it's just numbers. It's strictly numbers.
Councilor Pietrangelo.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we can all agree on the fact that we're looking at giving a boost or some type of leg up to any resident of Niagara Falls or to anyone that serves our fire services in the terms of a volunteer capacity. I think we can all agree on that. It's just a matter of how we get there. I think the last report that Mr. Dark came back with, in hindsight, was fairly good. He talked about giving residents of the city of Niagara Falls a maximum of 5 percentage points just for living in the city, and anyone that volunteers a maximum of 15 percentage points.
Seriously.
I find that to be quite fair. And I would say that if we give someone 15 percentage points and they're still not at the top, then we have to really question what we're doing. So hopefully it can come back in a report. I appreciate it.
Yeah, CAO is going to comment.
Mr. Mayor, just one other comment to Councillor Kerrio's remark. Just in that report that we had here on February 28th, that might help settle some of your concern. In that report that Mr. Dark had recommended was that we give that bonus to the local resident or volunteer, but it also indicated that the process would ensure that all residents or volunteers from Niagara Falls were in that first round of interviews. In other words, they were going to go through the process if they met the minimums. But what you'd be doing in that process, you'd be then comparing them to another group of external applicants. But they wouldn't get thrown out of the process right off the bat, and I think that's probably what your concern was, that depending on where you set that bar, they may not even get to that first step.
If we do it the other way, you're right.
Yeah, so this process was talking about ensuring that they would get into that first round, and then you'd start applying your bonus numbers or bonus calculations from there. So, but I think we can come back and try to get something that I think may be acceptable, Mr. Mayor.
And maybe it might be a good idea, too, that we get to see the actual criteria. I know we heard verbally the scoring system, and we can see how that 15% plays in, or whether that number is going to be higher than that, or whatever the case is going to be. But probably it would help us to see exactly, because, again, we want to give them a help up. We want to give them a hand up, not a handout. We want to make it without a doubt so that, as it's been said by Councilor Thompson, tie goes to the Niagara Falls person, and that is absolutely our intention. We don't want to have lower the quality, but at the same time, we want to increase the opportunity if you're from Niagara Falls and if you're from Niagara Falls and a volunteer firefighter. So we have a motion for referral back to staff by Councillor Maves, seconded by Councillor Morocco. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you, gentlemen, for coming out to help us tonight as well. Next up, under reports are appointment matters, and I'll call on the CAO to, or the clerk rather, tonight to lead us in this discussion. We do have some people in the gallery here for this matter as well. Councillor Iannone?
We also deferred a gentleman from the downtown upstairs in regard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. This was a new business item? It was. Okay, sir, pardon me? Do you know what it was about, Councillor? I know you're chairing the meeting downstairs.
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. It's in regards to the sidewalk. We all received an email from 5 members of the downtown BIA in regards to sidewalks for the downtown.
Okay. Okay, so
I
you
make
make
a
the
motion
motion?
to allow him to
Motion by
speak.
Councillor Iannone, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Okay, sir, if you'd please address the podium and state your name for the council.
Hi, yes, my name is Kevin Clement. I'm from Parish Crest Bistro. I'm also the vice chairman of the Downtown Board of Management. Recently, we just had actually my first meeting myself on the board on March the 9th. During that meeting, we were presented with information about the sidewalks and certain information. We actually had nobody present from the city to verify the information. Some information that the city was actually not prepared on such issues. And we voted a certain way, that we were prepared to postpone the sidewalks. We decided that, some of us decided that it probably was not the best way. We wanted to find out more information about the city. We contacted the city, find out some of the information that the city was actually ready, was due diligent. And we've been approached by many of the merchants in the street, downtown, that it is the #1 issue, which for us was told was not. This is just an issue that we'd like to bring forward.
Okay, Mr. Clement, we're going to get you an answer for that.
Sure.
Just before we do, we'll ask any councillors that have any questions or comment, and then we're going to get the CAO to address it, because I know there was, our office received a lot of calls too. There was a lot of confusion about the sidewalks were getting done, and then it was asked that by some that they be delayed until after the busiest season of downtown, and then it was asked, no, let's get it done now. So I know there's been a lot of confusion. So Councillor Iannone, if you wanted to address Mr. Clement, and then we'll ask the CAO to speak up once we're done with councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Clement. Mr. Clement, who told you the city was not prepared to go ahead with the sidewalks?
Mr. Grudd, Mordecai Grudd.
Okay, through you to Mr. Todd. Mr. Todd, were we not already putting out the tender? Like, were we not prepared to move that work forward?
Yeah, and I can go into some great detail if you'd like. But
Yes, please, if
I'd be
you
happy
could.
to answer that.
Well, yeah, maybe we can get the CAO just to...
Can I just... Mr. Mayor, I've had a long conversation with you today, with Mr. Todd, with Mr. Ayerfita. I guess what Mr. Todd and I discussed today was, how is it that a motion from the BIA came forward to staff saying that they wanted the sidewalks deferred? I had an opportunity to meet with almost a dozen of your businesses, private business owners, property owners downtown this morning for a number of hours, and had a long conversation with Mr. Clement. And Mr. Todd and I couldn't understand how was it that the motion came forward in the first place to discontinue that work. And from what I heard from a number of business owners today and from Mr. Clement himself, they were told this motion needs to go through because the city is not prepared. I heard a lot of things the city was supposedly not doing today that most of them aren't true, and I will raise that under a different issue. But Mr. Todd and I had a long conversation today where we didn't understand how it got to where it is, and that was misinformation to the people on the board who were actually voting on the topic at the time.
Okay, yep, no, that's great, appreciate it, we'll get all the answers.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Hey.
We've, Kevin and I and a number of the merchants, we've had several conversations over the last while, along with our staff, but maybe I'll try to be brief. But what was happening is our staff, Mr. Holman's staff, was diligently proceeding to get our next phase of the downtown redevelopment going, and that was the sidewalk tender. And our original intention was to have that tender advertised and returned by the end of March, and we were hoping to have a report to council on April the 4th so that we could proceed with the first phase of the sidewalks. We knew that we couldn't get all of the sidewalks done prior to the spring festival season with Springalicious in early June, but we felt we could probably get a couple of blocks in a phase 1 done prior to that. That tender needed to be let by April 4th in order for us to have enough time between the let of tender until the meeting in June, which is the first week of June, to get that first phase completed. We were going to do the second phase in September, so the contract would have been let in 2 different parts. We received a correspondence, a motion approved by the BIA Board of Management, I can't remember the exact date, but about a week and a half ago, that indicated that there was support of the board to postpone any of the sidewalk work until the fall because the board was concerned about disruption of business, tenancy issues, having the work completed by Springalicious. So myself and Mr. Holman, Mr. Felicetti, we met with the chair of the BIA and Mr. Grund, who's on the board, and we discussed deferring that. We were quite willing and able to go ahead with that tender on the 4th. After their meeting and the motion from the board, we decided that we would follow the wishes of the board and postpone that until September. The tender has gone out. The time frames for the tender have changed. And unfortunately, based on that motion and the conversation with the board, our tender now will not be back until April 14th, which means we would not be able to get it to council at the earliest, the last meeting in April, more likely the first meeting in May, to have that tender let by council. Unfortunately, that doesn't leave us a lot of construction time then to get in and get that work done before Springalicious. But I can tell you that as far as our staff was concerned, it was full steam ahead on this. We were ready. At our meeting, we actually indicated that actually that day, I believe, the tender call was going out, and we had every intention of getting this work, at least in the first phase, completed. But when we got the motion from the board, we listened to that and said, well, if that's what the BIA Board of Management wants, then we can certainly shift our scheduling, and that's where we are, Mr. Mayor. A number of the other merchants have come forward since then, quite vocally, that that's not what their intention was, that they want to see the work proceed. Unfortunately, right now, we have some logistics issues because of that tender, and we certainly need to talk about that, but that's where we are, and I'd be happy to answer any of the questions.
Okay. Councilor Iannone.
Thank you. Mr. Clement, how many members are on your board?
9.
9, and 5 of you now want this work to continue because you believe you were misinformed on the motion that you had that night.
We are. One member actually would like to resolve it at the next issue for the moment, though.
I'm sorry?
One of our members has reneged his signature on the letter and would like to have more information on the topic before he actually goes through with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we have it seems to me we have a timing issue to get it done because we're not going to do it during Springalicious. At least certainly that's not the plan. Is it possible that we could, if we had to have a special meeting, to approve something, is that possible through you?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think the first thing that we really need to address, and I appreciate Kevin being here and the other board members, but I really think what we need to do is get this matter right back to the board and have the board more fully discuss it and get that resolved. It's an issue where right now, I know the clerk is going to have a report here coming on April the 4th, where technically that board, that corresponds to have that board approved by council had not been here yet. The clerk can speak a little bit more to that issue. But in terms of the sidewalk issue, our staff's available. If we want to meet with the BIA, I think we really though need to get clear clarification. If there's now only 4 of the board members that are continuing to oppose it, chances are that motion from the BIA still may carry. But we really want to hear from not only the BIA, but I think all of the merchants as to where we want to proceed with this, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We've got Councilor Iannone, Morocco, and Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you know that I met with a number of the merchants today. I had called you and pre-warned you, informed you, didn't mean to say warned, pre-informed you that I was meeting with these people. Councillor Thompson and Councillor Wing were also invited. They couldn't attend. I would have rather not been there by myself today, but I did take probably about 8 pages of notes. I also have 5 letters from some of those business owners that would like council to take a look at, and you don't know, because what happened is on February 22nd, the BIA voted in their new board. A large number of members have a problem with the way the vote took place. Had talked with Mr. Clement today. The whole issue is a little bit problematic, and I have a question to the clerk. What was provided, and I think we need a report, and I'm going to make a motion for a report back from the clerk. I understand that a board member votes for 32 votes. Their one vote weighs for 32 votes because he owns 32 properties. I think I'm reading from the Municipal Act under the business improvement areas, and if I understand correctly, the Municipal Act supersedes a BIA's policy and procedure. Mr. Clerk, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the Municipal Act says that each member of an improvement area has one vote, regardless of the number of properties that the member may own or lease in the improvement area. That's different than how the vote took place on the 22nd. The minutes have been provided to me with a number of other information, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to submit all the information to the clerk to vet through legal to provide council with a report that will summarize the concerns of the BIA members who met with me today, still had their ballots because they didn't have a chance to vote. They all had them and didn't vote. But their concern was that one property owner could pretty much determine the entire board. And as I've seen the vote counts, I will tell you, I will provide that also. That does do it. So I'd like to provide all the information given to me in the meeting today, have all that information disseminated to all of council, and have the clerk bring back a report as to whether it is legal under the Municipal Act for one member to vote 32 times.
Okay, we've got the solicitor that would like to comment.
What this individual, my information is, I've had some familiarity with the situation, and I wouldn't want to discourage us from bringing back a report, but the individual in question, if he's the person I'm thinking of, has actually votes on behalf of 32 members, the 32 members being individual corporations that own individual properties. Each of those corporations is a person, as the term of law is, and each one would be an individual property owner. He then in turn has those corporations delegate to him their vote. And that's how he effectively has a majority on the floor as an individual. But each one of those corporations has a vote.
Okay, and we can have that added into the report as well for Councilor Iannoni. Yes, still?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my understanding is also, and Mr. Clement was there now that he's a new member and the vice chair, I understand what Mr. Beam is talking about in regards to this member voting as a proxy, but remarkably, after the board was voted in, they then voted that proxy votes were not allowed. So I think it's all convoluted, and my understanding is with the private property owners that I met with today, and through talking to some of the BIA management, that this board has now, there are members of this board that have now created an executive board where 3 members will now sit and oversee the board of the downtown board. These 3 members have decided upon themselves they're going to do that, and the members of the entire BAA, not the board, have no clue what I'm talking about. They're probably watching now saying, what's she talking about? Because none of them have been informed this. So it's so, I know that you've got the calls from them, I know Mr. Todd has got the calls from them, and I know a number of us have got the calls from them too. That's why for council members who are sitting here shaking their head, everybody needs the same information that I have. Okay. And I need the clerk to bring it back as a report.
Okay. All right, we'll do that. Councilor Morocco?
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, I think that I'm listening to 2 different things here. First, I'm hearing about the situation with the sidewalks and the delay to that effect, and also there's a problem with the BIA's, downtown BIA's board. Totally 2 different issues, I think, that need to be addressed. And if we want to talk about BIAs and problems, and because it's a new board, I can remember a few years ago that we actually sent Dean into Chippewa to try and sit and give them the 101 on BIAs and how they should operate. And I would like to have the support of council to maybe have Dean attend one of their meetings and give them an overview of how a board and BIA is supposed to operate and some of the policies and procedures that are set out municipally. As far as the sidewalk, I still have the floor.
Okay, you do.
As far as the sidewalk goes, Ken, I think that my understanding through some conversation is that some of it was delayed because there was some talk about the design that they were looking at, and they were looking to get some reports back. So I don't know if Jeff wants to address that, or you can address that, but is that not the reason why there is a delay, because some of the report had to come back about the design?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had pretty much nailed down the design. In fact, just to put in perspective, over the last number of months, our staff have been meeting weekly, sometimes twice weekly, with representatives from the BIA, trying to hammer out that design. And I think right now we're pretty satisfied on the design. The design looks pretty good. We had an actual presentation to our senior management team meeting 2 or 3 weeks ago where we presented the design. Everybody was happy with it. We had a few little issues to deal with. And my understanding is the BIA board themselves were accepting of the concept. So that really wasn't the issue. The issue that came back to us in the letter was that the BIA board thought that the timing of it for the businesses was better to do it in the fall than it would be doing in the spring, and have the disruption and try to get the work completed and get out of there, at least with a couple of blocks, before Spring-alicious happened in June. So I don't think it was really an issue from our end. In fact, as I say, we had the tenders just about ready to go, that we could have had a report back to council on April the 4th with that tender award.
So I understand that. I guess Councillor Iannoni is just looking that we make sure that the downtown BIA is aware that it's not the city that's responsible for the delay in the sidewalk redevelopment.
No, it was as a direct result of a letter coming from the BIA Board of Management that indicated they would like us to delay until September. We were, as I say, we were ready to go with the tenders and have a tender award there for the 4th. Probably construction could have started about mid-April. That would have given us 6 to 7 weeks to do at least a couple of blocks. Knowing all along it would have been phased in 2 phases, but it would have given us a chance to at least get a couple blocks before the summer season, and then go back into the fall and do a couple more.
Yeah, I can see that another season of construction again, but so in other words, we're actually going to send Dean down there to solve both problems. Thanks, Dean.
Well, or create some new ones, we're not sure. We, actually, the CAO and myself, we had discussed exactly that, having our clerk go down and act as an observer and help them through their own governance to make sure that everything was adhered to as it should be. So even before these discussions, well, that's exactly our discussion.
Okay, good idea, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
I think if you asked Dean what he does with his time, he'll probably tell you the visits he makes regarding BIAs. He's been at the Fallsview BIA regarding a similar situation with respect to boating and the number of properties just in the last couple of weeks. And of course, Lundy's Lane has had a similar problem and concern for some time. So it's another phase that we have to go through. And I think that his expertise and knowledge is certainly going to help that. But I kind of got out of wondering what's happening here. The sidewalk issue was going ahead. You got a letter from the, or an indication from the BIA to go ahead, and then you got a letter saying don't go ahead, and some of the board members didn't know about that. I'm confused. What's going on here?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What happened is we were all set to go and do a tender award, have a report back for April 4th. Prior to us doing that, we got a letter from the BIA, the Board of Management had approved a motion saying, don't do it in the spring. We'd like you to wait to do any sidewalks until September. So we met with the chairman of the board and said, you know, can you explain where this is coming from?
Well, so what are we hearing here? Yeah. Are you saying that that is not accurate? Is there was something done that was inappropriate?
In which way would you?
With respect to the, you're saying that the delay, the letter from the BIA wasn't with the board's full knowledge? Is that what you're suggesting?
The knowledge that was provided to us, we believed was accurate. That we were told that the city was not ready. with further investigation and basically asking around, the city was ready, and we believe we were misled.
Councilor Thompson, that was a debate or discussion that took place at the BIA Board of Management. And since that time, what's happened is there's now 4 board members that were at that meeting and voted in favor, I think it was unanimous, to stop or to delay the sidewalks till September. 4 of the 9 board members now are having second thoughts about that and want to have the issue revisited at the board.
Okay, so there was nothing underhanded here with respect to the information going back and forth with respect to this matter?
No, I don't know what information was discussed or presented at, we didn't have a staff member at the board meeting because we don't typically have somebody.
I got the impression that maybe the letter was sent without the authority of the board, but...
No, it was an actual motion, yes, it was,
okay.
Of the board.
All right, I just hope that what they have downtown is something very special. The revitalization is going on, and I think everybody around this table, all the members of the board, and all of the people on the downtown, we're all going to have to join hands and work together and make sure all of this happens, because we have a very fragile situation there, and it isn't going to happen if we're starting to have infighting. And hopefully we can, through Dean and through this council, make sure that we all work together and make it all happen.
Yeah, and anytime there's going to be change, there's going to be debate, there's going to be obstacles. And what do they say? To make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. And that's okay, especially you're in the crepe business. I thought you'd appreciate that, Mr. Clement. Councillor Wing.
Thank you. As Councillor Thompson alluded to, proxy votes have been a thorny issue at the Lundy's Lane BIA as well, and I kind of suspect they're a main cause of dissension within BIAs. I believe, just from what I've observed, that the exercise of proxy votes at BIAs really should be either strictly limited or disallowed altogether. And I remember having an email debate with Mr. Arafita about this, and I can't remember how we left it, but I guess my question is, who has the authority to regulate this? Is it municipal power or is it provincial? Because if it's provincial, I think we should be sending a resolution to the provincial government asking for that to be done.
Through the chair, you raised a number of things. I'm aware of all the issues downtown, and I was anticipating doing a report on April the 4th anyways, which I'll be doing. And, I don't really want to preempt that report by answering all questions right now. But the fact of the matter is that a couple things. Number one, the Municipal Act obviously governs. And there's a difference between proxies that you're referring to and what Mr. Beeman alluded to, which is the fact that, it's one thing if Jim Diodati, Janice Wing, owns a number of properties in the BIA under the name Janice Wing. Okay, you own 8 properties, you're only entitled to 1 vote. It's right there in the Act. Doesn't matter how many properties you own, you're entitled to 1 vote. Now, if you, Janice Wing, have 8 numbered companies that you're a principal of those companies, each one of those companies technically is allowed to vote in the BIA. Is that in the spirit of the BIA provisions under the Municipal Act? I guess that's the debate and the crux of the issue. So it's different than the proxy issue, and actually what has been done and why a lot of this is coming to light now is actually through a draft policy that I sent to all of the BIAs. You'll recall that one of the many council outstanding items is this idea of kind of terms, for voting for the BIAs. I was tasked with that, and in fact completed that and had a draft in December, and it was suggested at the senior staff table, rightly so, that I circulate that draft to the BIAs for input. And in fact, some of the BIAs have actually adopted some of those principles already without me even bringing the report back to council. And proxies, for example, I believe the Lenny's Lane BIA has decided not to allow proxies because of the problems that it creates at a BIA general meeting especially. It tends to look like a banana republic when somebody shows up with 40 votes of questionable validity. That's not exactly what happened in downtown, and I'll explain that in the report on April the 4th. I just want to add about the sidewalks, and I appreciate what the CAO said. Staff was prepared to come back, obviously, with the tender, and we're trying to expedite it as quickly as possible. We do have, though, certain notification periods that we follow in our supply and services policy, so I think also there was a bit of a timing issue. But I just want to clarify what the timing is right now. It has been advertised in the paper. On, I believe it's March 29th, the contractors can come and pick up the tender, the specs, if you will. There's a $50 deposit, which is traditional on our construction tenders. There is a pre-meeting with interested contractors on April 4th, and we're closing that tender on April the 12th. Obviously, our next council meeting after that is April 18th, and I think really the issue becomes then what can be done comfortably in time for the season in June. So I think we'll have a better gauge on that, whether we need a special meeting or not. I think we could maybe have a handout report on the 18th to deal with that issue as far as the sidewalks go. I mean, there's the other issue which has been sort of alluded to. Council approves a board of management, a BIA, and as you should recall, at the beginning of each term, the BIAs will submit their list of their board. It's been elected by their general membership. It comes to council. The council usually rubber stamps that, but under the Municipal Act, you do have the authority to send it back to the BIA if you feel that maybe the process wasn't followed properly. So then, you know, the sort of question becomes the BIA, which hasn't been approved yet, the board hasn't been approved by council, and they're sending correspondences. When do those become official? I mean, that's a separate issue, but I think on the sidewalk issue, it can be dealt with. The tender will be opened on April 12th. We'll have that then, and we could possibly bring that on April 18th. And by that time, maybe the BIA can clarify their wishes as far as when they want construction to take place.
Councillor Iannone. Oh, first of all, Councillor Wing, are you finished?
I understand what Mr. Dita said about the difference between Lundy's Lane and the proxy problem there and the Queen Street situation. It seems to me that each individual business should have its own representation there, not, you know, one person wielding 32 votes from 32 individual properties. I'd just like to know how to address that so that the situation does not continue and doesn't occur again either in this BIA or elsewhere.
Well, I'd like to obviously contemplate that with Mr. Beeman. Obviously, there's legal issues there. I mean, I think morally, the act is pretty clear on the one vote, multiple property concept. And, you know, even though legally someone who has principal interests in 32 companies may be able to cast 32 BIA votes, I don't think it bodes well for the camaraderie at the BIA level to do that. That's my personal opinion. I've shared that actually with the solicitor for the person who has those 37 votes, but you know, as the solicitor for that person indicated under the act, because they're separate companies, those separate companies are entitled to vote. Those separate companies are able to designate an individual, and that designated individual can cast more than one vote in a BIA general membership meeting if you follow the provisions of the Municipal Act. Should they? That's a different question. Can they? Yes.
In that case, I look forward to you coming up with a solution in this forthcoming report. And if it's a resolution to the province asking them to fix the little hole in the dam, then great.
Okay. Councillor Iannone, then Councillor Kerrio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, you know, we jokingly talk about sending a resolution to council and morally and ethically and all those things. The people I sat today have 2 and 3 mortgages on their home to float their businesses and the properties they have downtown. They don't think this is funny. I heard over and over again that different entities have been told if the one entity that owns the 37 properties is not the point man to the city, that we will withdraw our support from the downtown. That is entirely untrue. And I want to tell the downtown business owners that is absolutely not true. It doesn't matter who the point person is to come to council. Our CIP is our CIP. So it doesn't matter who your liaison is to council. We've already passed a CIP. Councillor Thompson talked about the very delicate balance downtown. Your delicate balance is going to blow up very shortly. And I'm not saying that third person. I know they've told you and Mr. Todd that directly to yourselves. The group that I spoke to today wants to splinter from the BIA so that they don't have one entity holding 37 votes that controls whether or not they make a living to float their businesses. They thought that this council, and they said this council, we are the infamous they. Do you know when people talk about they do this and they do that? The 9 of us, to these people whose lives are invested downtown, we are the they that supposedly hold this gavel over whether they're successful business-wise or not. And I told them the CIP is not geared to one business owner. The CIP applies to all of them, that the support for the downtown is for all of them, not one entity. And I heard many, many different comments that I won't repeat here, having been, some of them were threatened, some of them were told, if this one entity pulls out, all of us are gone. None of us will politically support them. And I said, well, I don't know who told them that, but that's not the case around this council. If the commitment is to the downtown, it's to the downtown as a whole, not to one business owner. So anybody who sat there today needs to understand that to us, we want the entire downtown to succeed, not one entity. My problem has always been the one entity, and we own downtown, not one entity. And I want the people who sat with us today, and some of them were very emotional, Mr. Mayor, I know you've talked to them, who say if it doesn't get fixed, they're going to be leaving the downtown. They're not chain stores. They are mom and pop businesses who count on our leadership, not one entity, our leadership to step in and say, you're going to thrive and you're not going to lose the 2 mortgages you put on your house. And I think Mr. Ayerfita's report is going to give us the ability to show them that we're treating them all fair, including whether I have voted on motions here that I have said I didn't have all the information later on, endlessly. And we've actually had a list come up. You actually asked for the list to create what was done and what wasn't done in regards to motions we've done. And Mr. Clement, I've asked for the minutes, voted on a motion that he was incorrectly given information. And I think that Mr. Ayerfita's report has to cover all of that too, because the powder keg that I sat in today is going to explode. And I would hate to see us lose whatever progress we believe we've had with the problems that are taking place down there. Maybe they just need our leadership to step in.
Fair enough. Councillor Kerrigan.
I'll wait till it comes back with his report. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. So do we have we've got a motion from Councillor Iannoni that the report come back, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much, Mr. Clement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Merci beaucoup. All right. Now that I've razzled and dazzled you with my French, time to move on to review of appointments. And I know that we have some people in the gallery that have been waiting anxiously for this, and I would ask the clerk to please address this topic.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the beginning of each council term, we like to obviously take stock in a number of the things we do, and one of those is obviously the appointments, whether they be the appointing of citizens to various city advisory committees or even council's own appointments. So we did a review again this term. Our last major review was back in 2004. And at that time, I think we did quite a job in consolidating a number of the appointments, actually discovering some appointments and fine-tuning a lot of things. So we went through a similar exercise staff did. This time, obviously, Kathy Moldenhauer with the Recreation and Culture Department did a lot of the legwork as far as the committees that fall under that umbrella. We provided you with a fairly extensive report, and I apologize. I realize getting it on Thursday and digesting a lot of it is no easy task, so I thank you for your indulgence on that. I'll just highlight a few things related to the report. They're sort of set out in the recommendation, but I'll add a bit to it. Obviously, one of the major recommendations is the merging of the Recreation Committee with the Arts and Culture Committee. That was the suggestion that was brought forward from that department. We realize that sometimes that's considered a bit of a radical recommendation, although we would remind council that back in 2004, when we did the review of committees, it was broached at that time. Similarly, the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan recommended that as well, although we fully appreciate that there's a feeling in the community that maybe there's not that synergy between those two different committees, and it doesn't make sense to merge them because they deal with different issues. And obviously, we've got Karen Frazier here, who's been the chair of the Arts and Culture Committee in the past, and I know Karen wishes to speak, and I'm sure council will grant her that privilege as well. One of the other things we found is that it seems that your advisory committees to council are the ones, and a number of them that are under the Recreation and Culture banner, tend to have a lot of members, or tend to want a lot of members. So one of the recommendations we're making in this report is that the Recreation Culture Department investigate a volunteer roster, because it seems that a number of the activities involve the need for a lot of people helping out with events, etc. So we're asking that maybe the department look at a volunteer roster. So maybe people could sign up to help with Canada Day, help with the numerous Park in the City events, that sort of thing. So that's one of the other recommendations. We're also formalizing a number of things that have been our practices, and they're under the general terms of reference for advisory committees of council, and they also allow for a few other things. For example, citizens who are appointed to council committees are there at the whim of council, obviously. And we found that in a number of our committees, people will sign up. They may get disillusioned, or they may have just signed up to say they were part of that committee, but they don't attend those meetings. What the process has been in the past is that if they've missed 3 meetings, then the committee, the staff liaison was to bring forward a communication to us to indicate that this person hasn't attended. But usually, what would happen is the person would say, no, not that fast. I have all full intention of attending that committee, and then probably didn't attend anyway. So what we're saying is that if a committee volunteer misses 3 meetings in a row without adequate explanation, they're automatically off the committee. So there's not that need to bring it back to council. So we're hoping with that, they will take their commitment seriously. There's other things in that general terms of reference that council can read. But like I said, a lot of times it's just sort of formalizing things that we already do. It's basically saying, for example, that if a council member is interested in participating, they participate. It's outlining what quorum is, and it's also one of the highlighted recommendations indicating that any ad hoc committee automatically ends its life when it's done what it's been mandated to do. One of the new committees is the Niagara Falls Museums Advisory Board. That came out of the disbandment of the Board of Museums that council dealt with a couple of weeks ago. We've provided a draft terms of reference for council's consideration tonight. That was done with various suggestions from the museum manager and some background that Mr. Dark had provided in an earlier report. The report also addresses your own appointments as council members. You were all given a copy of what the appointments were last term. You're asked to fill that out. Some of you have already provided it to me. Just check off what you're interested in. Obviously, for Councillor Gates and Councillor Morocco, they weren't here last term. They will obviously have to take a look at that and consider what they're interested in attending. We'll take those surveys, see if there's any duplication. If there is, we'll let council know what that duplication is. Hopefully you'll work it out amicably amongst yourselves, which you've done in the past. If not, there may be the need to have some runoffs, votes at a future council meeting. Yes. Also, I know some councillors have expressed concern about their appointments to external bodies. The report outlines those external bodies. Those are your Boys and Girls Club, your Humane Society, Festival of Lights, Niagara Falls Tourism, and those are the bodies that are external to the city that the city gives money to, usually through the fee-for-service process in the budget. Obviously, the rationale for council members being on those external bodies is to be a liaison with them, number one, be a communication source, number two, but number three, protect the interest of the city's investment, the money that's been granted. I appreciate that there's been some difficulties in the past where the council member's been put in awkward positions. Maybe will be contrary, maybe the city's position is contrary to what that outside body wants. Staff is of the opinion it makes sense for council members to be there. We understand that some council members are wishing that maybe staff liaisons be appointed to those external bodies. Whether those external bodies would be open to staff members there, I don't know, but of course council ultimately wields the power as far as how much money you give them on an annual basis, so council members should bear that in mind. With regard to your advisory committees, the ones that provide recommendations to council, my opinion has always been firm. Apply if you're interested, don't apply if you're not interested. Most of those committees are ably represented by a staff liaison who will bring reports forward. And I know council takes all of those recommendation reports seriously, whether there's a council member on those advisory boards or whether it's just a staff person bringing forward recommendations. So I know it's a lot to digest. I know Karen wishes to speak, and I'm willing to answer any questions that the council members may have.
Okay, can we have a motion to have Karen speak, please? Motion by Councillor Carrier, second by Councillor Gates. All those in favor? Welcome, Karen. If you could state your name, please.
Karen Fraser, Chair of Arts and Culture, and I'm sorry, I didn't expect those extra topics to come up, and I literally have to leave. I don't have time to say what I wanted, and it's upsetting. Anyway, so I have to just hit the bottom line here right now. We are here tonight to decide what is best for the arts and culture community by way of the Arts and Culture Committee. And it was talked about that the committees were reviewed in 2004, and when it comes to the Arts and Culture Committee itself, I think you know the art world is a horse of a different color. It cannot be in a cookie cutter frame of mind, and our last revision of the Arts and Culture Committee looked good in theory, but in practice it didn't work. And we've been struggling ever since. And I don't have time to give you examples. So what I'm asking you tonight is just to please support us. The Arts and Culture Committee deserves to be heard, and we are asking that you leave the committee as is, give us a full slate of members, and review us in 2012 like this report says that you wanted to review us in 2012. We were just asking to be left as is until then.
Thank you, Ms. Fraser, and also thank you for your email today. There's been a lot of dialogue around this council, and I think before you leave, we can probably resolve your problem. Councillor Thompson?
Yes, thank you, and I'll be very quick because she has to leave. When I first saw the suggestion of the amalgamation of recreation and arts and culture, I was very surprised. I've heard of apples and oranges, but this is more coconuts and watermelons or something, I don't know. It just doesn't jive. Arts and culture, the percentage of people who are really sincerely interested in arts and culture is very small compared to recreation. Recreation, every son, daughter is in hockey, soccer, all kinds of things, and there's some major issues there. It takes a very special and unique individual who has the desire to be involved, and usually are artists themselves who are involved in arts and culture. And when I saw this, it was obvious, and then heard all of the emails that came as a result of the people who did not wish to see this amalgamation. I think there are some other amalgamations that could happen, and I talked to the clerk about that earlier, but just to solve this one, I would make a motion that the arts and culture be separate on its own and not amalgamated with the Recreation Commission.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Pietrangelo. Any other discussion on this, Councillor Wing?
I certainly agree with Councillor Thompson that merger of the arts
The
and
coconut
culture
part and the watermelon part, or the?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You know, common functions, but definitely not common interests. That would be very, very bad. But I can also appreciate the, you know, the staff concern with streamlining and improved efficiency and the best use of departmental resources. And I really believe that a far more comfortable and marriage with a better outcome would be marrying the museum and arts and culture committees. And I actually found the part in here. I thought it was me who thought this up, but there's a section of the report which talks about the opportunity to combine the arts and culture with the museum advisory committee, especially with regard to programming the renovated Niagara Falls History Museum. You know, there's going to be public space there, and it makes sense to bring these two groups together to make the best use of that space that tax money is paying for. And I've also noted that community arts and Artists Niagara are heavily involved in bicentennial preparations and celebrations. They've been running various workshops, and you know, their heritage and culture are very much one and the same thing. And to me, this just makes a natural it's just natural to bring them together, and it will certainly help staff in terms of streamlining. The museum is now under the same department as the Arts and Culture Committee has been up to until now. So I would rather see that and at least get one merger out of this. The other thing I'd like to see happen is, it's pointed out elsewhere in the report that there's the former Trail and Bikeway Committee did things like the bicycle safety program and the Ride of Silence, which actually more properly belong under the Recreation Committee's programming than under the Park and the City. So I would like to see the Recreation Committee expand its mandate to include those things and leave the active transportation concerns with Park and the City, because that's very much part of their focus on environmental affairs. So if we can just get that one merger done. I would like to also see staff come back with a report on some of the other mergers they suggested, fence viewers and something else. Like if we can streamline as much as possible, that would be great. I also was really happy to see some discussion about mandatory orientation sessions. I know St. Catharines and I believe Niagara-on-the-Lake both do that at the airport. There is an invitation to candidates to come out to the airport and be toured around by the manager, have the duties explained, and a few didn't bother to show up, so obviously that reflected on their success when it came to the council voting on whether or not to appoint them. But I think it's really critical to getting the best candidates into those seats to let them know what's expected of them, what kind of time dedication they're facing, and what it is actually all about, because they might think it's one thing and it turns out to be something a little different. So then we won't have the same problems with people dropping off committees. But I can't support the motion that's on the floor. I would like to see a slightly different outcome, which I think would really benefit both.
Okay, question to the clerk. Well, the first motion is keeping it separate, Arts and Culture from Recreation Committee. Could we do that motion, then have a motion of the Arts and Culture being combined with museums, such as Councillor Wing is suggesting, or are you, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I think I had a discussion with Councillor Wing today about this, and I think you heard from the chairperson that they want their own separate committee to exist without an amalgamation, and I think that's appropriate. I think the museum is going to be the council's responsibility now, basically, and with an advisory committee and a fundraising group. So I think that's going to change completely. And the two, I don't know whether I could see the bike and trailway and recreation coming together and some of those other ones, but I think this one is very passionate about what they would like to see happen here.
Just ask the clerk to comment, and then Councillor Pietrangelo, Councillor Wing to also comment.
Yeah, I know that the new Niagara Falls Museums Advisory Board, weren't maybe opposed to some sort of amalgamation with the Arts and Culture Committee, but I think they wanted to kind of get their feet wet in their new format. So, maybe the solution is status quo for now, and maybe a review within the term to see if there's a possible synergy between the Arts and Culture Committee and this new Niagara Falls Museums Advisory Board. Of course, whether that'll come to fruition or not, I mean, we make the recommendation every 4 years, and, it's usually, no, not yet. It's kind of like reducing the size of Niagara Regional Council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pietrangelo?
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm glad the clerk didn't say Niagara Falls City Council, because he would have bit his tongue on that one. Exactly. Your Worship, the motion that's on the floor, I think everyone can agree with. I don't think it's going to serve either group any benefit, the Rec Committee or the Arts and Culture Committee, to merge the two. I don't think the Rec Committee is going to be benefited by having the Arts and Culture people with it, and vice versa. So perhaps we can just take the motion, and then there's a discussion after we get out.
Fair enough. Okay. Councillor Wing, was it to the motion?
Yeah, actually, a clarification. I thought the motion was to leave the Arts and Culture Committee as a separate standalone committee. That's why I can't support it, is I think a merger with the museum committee would be very natural and very beneficial. I mean, I'm trying to find some middle ground here. Staff's recommending shrinking the number of committees, and I'm seeing a way to shrink them without putting recreation and arts and culture into an unhappy marriage, which really wouldn't be beneficial. I had something else I wanted to say, and I can't remember what it is. I'm sorry, I needed clarification. I still won't support the motion because I think we could be blending them with another one.
Okay, well, we'll call the motion. All those in favor, combining, keeping separate Recreation Committee from Arts and Culture? Okay, opposed? Okay, unopposed? So that decision's been made. Mr. Clerk, are there any other ones that you want us to address tonight?
Well, I would ask, I mean, do you approve then the rest of the report in total? Also, Carl's given me the evil eye. In your handouts this evening, brought forward was the Transit Routing Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. This committee you added a couple of meetings ago. It's obviously an ad hoc committee. It has a finite term for it to come up with the new routing for transit. They solicited members of the public at large, and they received, I guess, 9 interested parties for 2 positions, but staff and in discussion with Councillor Iannone, who's been named to the committee, are suggesting that you approve maybe the 4 citizens in the public at large. So I guess the question to council is whether you want to accept what's been put forward vis-a-vis the Transit Routing Ad Hoc Advisory Committee.
Councillor Iannone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had an opportunity to meet with staff. Staff and I had the opportunity to meet with the first set of stakeholders, and that was all your transit bus drivers and staff. We met at the community center a number of weeks ago. Close to 50, I think we were close to 50 staff, bus drivers, mechanics, management. It was a great meeting. Our new Mr. Goody was there also. We had a very good discussion, and we listened to the people who should be able to tell us how the route should be changed in order to find efficiencies that would meet the public's need and our need. We found a lot of deficiencies that we're going to be working on. The reason the committee is so large is because A, I don't have a problem chairing a large committee, and B, I believe we're going to have the same drop-off that the clerk spoke about. The citizens that we looked at, some use it full-time for work, some use it for school, some use it for just recreation, but they're all regular transit users from different areas of the city, and we thought that was important also. So I just want council to know that they will also be regularly updated bi-monthly, and it's going very well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Iannoni. So then, can we have a motion to approve the balance of the report, which would include the transit? Councillor Iannoni, seconded by Councillor Morocco. Yes, Councillor Morocco.
I just want to point out, I have a conflict with one of the boards, which would be Niagara Falls Tourism. I'm in a legal issue with them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pietrangelo.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just on the issue of council representation on some of the boards that are outside of City Hall, I know just in speaking with our CAO a couple of weeks ago, it was suggested that perhaps in some of the boards that we give large amounts of money to, it not be per se an elected official that goes to these meetings, but rather a staff person. And I think that the thinking behind it is that, especially when we're in a fee-for-service, that council doesn't receive any type of update or any type of report right now, currently, for the dollars that we give out. And I don't want to pick out any organization because I really don't want to center anyone out, but there's a lot of organizations that we have there that are fee-for-service, and council really doesn't have any type of indication of where our money is going to. So I know Mr. Todd has made the suggestion that perhaps we should be looking at having a staff member attend those meetings, and whether it be every single meeting or whether it be periodically, and then report back to council on where our money is actually getting us and whether or not it's a good expenditure for the citizens of Niagara Falls. And I'm not sure, Your Worship, through you, if Mr. Todd wants to expand on it, but I'll leave it up to him.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Council. That's certainly an option, and what Council, and it's going to be the next presentation when we talk about the budget, one of the things you're going to see us talk about tonight is just that fee-for-service. And it's my belief that on any of the fee-for-service organizations, especially the ones that are getting large dollar amounts from us, that a staff person be assigned to that group. So, for example, with the Winter Festival of Lights, it would be Mr. Felicetti, and he would be the liaison, staff liaison from the staff level. He would then be the one that would be keeping in constant contact. He would be the one that would be reporting on the Festival of Lights to ensure that we are getting our value for our dollar. So that will go on anyway. So if there's a need or a desire not to have the council rep on the board, I could certainly assure you that we're going to be assigning a staff person to that, but that's certainly up to council, and we've already instructed the staff to do that. So each of those major areas have been assigned to a staff person already to be the liaison between that group and council.
Okay, Councilor Pietrangelo.
Thanks, Your Worship. And just to elaborate, I think it would be a good idea from the standpoint that sometimes us as councillors get put in a very sort of precarious position by an organization that is receiving money from the city of Niagara Falls. And when we go onto their board, it's almost that there's a certain expectation that we are 100 or 110% on their side. And I think that staff would have the ability to be much more objective than we would. And by all means, Your Worship, I think if any council member wanted to still attend these meetings, they would be more than welcome to do so. But I think it would be better to have an objective opinion come from staff on whether or not we're getting good value for our dollar.
Okay, thank you. Just before we move on, I've got the clerk would like to comment, and we've got Councillor.
Yeah, and I mean, you're getting the survey of what you want to volunteer for. The external bodies are there. If you want to volunteer for them, by all means, check off yes. If you don't, check off no. I'm not sure a staff member, is going to have any more leeway than a council member sitting on an external body. But like I said earlier, council holds the ultimate weapon, which is your budget process, and if you don't like how they're treating you at the external board, you can remind them that they're getting $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 from the council.
Councillor Thompson?
Well, actually, this already exists in most cases. Niagara Falls Tourism, Mr. Filicetti is there at every meeting. Mr. Todd is also, as Mr. who's the former CAO, what was his name?
McDonald?
How soon we forget. John McDonald was there almost every meeting, and Mr. Todd has been invited to be in attendance, in fact, to sit on the board. Unfortunately, to this point, he's been very negligent in that situation and hasn't been there. With the Winter Festival of Lights, Mr. Filicetti is there all the time, along with the council reps. So I think we have a dual role. Certainly as council members, we have a responsibility to answer to the electorate, and by sitting there and having that information, and if we do agree and if we do support what is going on there, and it is good for the community, then we be a champion for that organization when it comes to discussions, questions, or debates at council. So I think that situation actually exists as we speak, and I think that there could be some tweaking, but I think it's already in certainly the committees I sit on. Senior staff are represented there on a regular basis.
Well, we'll have to work on Mr. Todd, but to Councillor Pietrangelo point, I know of certain situations where it probably would make sense, some tweaking, as you'd say, Councillor Thompson, where it would make sense. We've got Councillor Iannoni, then Councillor Carey. Oh, I'm sorry, did you have another comment to that, Councillor Pietrangelo?
I was just going to say, I mean, if you look at our fee-for-service, I think that of the 15 that we have there, 8 of them we have no staff member that attend, and 7 of them we do have a council member on there. So I don't think that it exists in most cases. And if you take a look at the other page, which is our grants, pretty much none of them we attend. So it's not already in the system.
Okay. Councillor Iannoni, then Councillor Carey.
Thank you. I just want to echo Councillor Pietrangelo's comments in regard to when you sit on a board that is a fee-for-service. I think you find yourself in the difficulty when you're sitting through their budget opportunity, watching them vote for things that they then know, you then know they're going to come back to council and ask for money you know you don't have. So I think it puts a councillor in a precarious position. Just went through it myself, and I find it perhaps we need to have a liaison through staff sitting at those committees, because it becomes very uncomfortable afterwards. And you know, when you have to point out that you work for the residents and not for the board that you sit on, it becomes a little bit difficult. So I think there needs to be a fine balance between the two. And I think if you have a councillor sitting on that type of committee, I think a voice, no vote position is a wise one to take, because you don't want to find yourself voting for budget items that you then have to vote against at this council chamber.
Good point. Councillor Carey.
Just quickly, Your Worship, I agree with Councillor Pietrangelo. I think it puts councillors in a difficult position. If you're on those boards, council should be completely unbiased when deciding on what to do at budget time. We work for the taxpayers. We don't work for these boards, these commissions, these little interest groups. We are responsible for the taxpayers. We keep our taxpayer hat on so that we're completely unbiased when it comes to budget time, because I think that's the most important thing we do. But my question was going to be, could we then take out, if we're going to vote on this, where it says council member, could it be council or staff? Because in some instances, it just says council. So council or staff, as council sees fit or whatever, so that we're not saying that it's got to be a council member.
Okay, we'll get comment from the clerk.
We're not saying it's got to be a council member. The only time we're saying it's got to be a council member is maybe some of those statutorily required bodies. Obviously, we're not going to force you to attend any meeting you don't want to attend, that's for sure. And like I said, the survey that goes around will be the final answer to that, because you know, some of you, like Councillor Wing's already given indication that she will continue to be a part of the Humane Society Board if no one else puts their name forward. So really, that's up to you as council members. We're not going to force you on any of those external bodies if you don't wish to be there. And if there's any gaps, I guess, then staff will get together and figure out how we can best ensure that the taxpayers' money is well spent, whether it's a staff person being part of that board or some other mode of communication or reporting back.
Okay, so do we have a motion on the floor? Yes. We do have a motion on the floor for the balance?
Balance of the recommendations and approving the names put forward for the Transit Routing Ad Hoc Advisory Committee.
So Carl can stop sending you the dirty looks. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. I'm gonna. Yeah, of course, Councilor Pietrangelo.
Yeah. Was the motion on the floor going to change the fact that we have council representation on some of these outside boards, as was suggested?
No, I'm saying you don't need to do that.
I guess my issue then, Your Worship, is we give away grants from $648 all the way up to $3.6 million to any single organization. And we don't have reports coming back to us saying that we're getting good value for our dollar. Some of them, we don't even have, or I should say most of them, we don't even have any representation, whether that be from staff or councillors on committees, commissions, or boards. I don't think it's a good practice, and I think we should change it.
Maybe the clerk might want to.
Well, I think the CAO addressed this. You know, we will be through the budget process preparing a report on the various fee-for-services at the next council meeting, which will talk about that. And I think, like I just alluded to, we'll see how council's survey comes out, and if we feel there's a gap where the city's not getting that information back, I'm sure through Mr. Todd, we'll assign an appropriate staff person. You also have to bear in mind that you know, it's up to the outside body, and you know, as far as how their constitution, bylaws, etc., state their composition of their board. One of those external bodies came about, the council representation came about actually because there had been a staff person there, and it was felt that the staff person didn't have enough authority at that body, so therefore a council member was appointed. So it's come full circle.
Your Worship, I would be happy then, even with an addendum to the motion, saying that staff is going to come back with a future report addressing this. I mean, I think we need some representation. We need something in front of us that tells us what type of value we're getting for our dollar.
So who are the movers and the seconders on that one? Do we have that?
I think it was Councillor Iannone and Councillor Morocco.
Okay, would you be open to a friendly amendment to add that staff come back and address the issue that Councillor Pietrangelo brings forward? Yes? Okay. Yes, we've got agreements. Yes, Councillor Wayne?
I have a friendly amendment as well, that staff also, in that report, address the concept of mandatory orientation sessions for first-time applicants. I honestly think that's really important, and I'd like to sort of, if it's possible, get a little bit more of a feel for the applicants, because a lot of them I've never met, and you know, they could be the best of the best, but I don't know it because I haven't had a chance to meet them, and maybe what they have down on paper doesn't reflect them. So I wouldn't mind getting some comments from staff about the person's qualifications and suitability. Yeah, I just like a little bit more to go on.
Okay. Yeah,
well, we don't need a report. You tell us whether you want us to do it now, because the fact of the matter is, what our intention is, once this report is approved, we'd start advertising for the citizen appointments right away with the hope of bringing them back for the April 18th meeting. So if you want to direct staff to have an orientation session within that time period, do it tonight. There's really nothing to report back to you. It's just, yeah, there's value in that. We would obviously like people to be informed when they apply for various committees. Whether you make it mandatory or not, I mean, obviously there's a lot of returning people applying who probably don't need to attend such an orientation session. We can obviously have something, set it up with, I know Kathy sent me some emails on it as well. I've talked to my staff about possibly arranging something, so we could probably do something in fairly short order and give you an indication of attendees, that sort of thing.
So would you like that to be an amendment or a separate motion?
Separate motion, please.
Okay, all right, so we've got the first motion on the table. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you. We've got a separate motion by Councillor Wing that we ask that did you want to,
I guess it would only be mandatory for first-time applicants.
Yeah.
People who've already served a term or more are obviously very familiar with the board or committee and what it does and what it's all about. But I mean, I wouldn't mind, as the person, one of the people who's going to be voting to put people on those boards or committees, having the opportunity to meet them and talk with them and see why they're interested and get an idea of how good a fit they'd be.
okay. Got a motion by Councillor Wing, seconded by, do we have a second, Councillor Morocco? Any discussion on the mandatory orientation for first-time members? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Now, I will call up Councillor Pietrangelo as we will jump into 2011 budget and ask the CAO to get us started as soon as Councillor Pietrangelo is ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. As it says on our agenda, our CAO, Mr. Todd, is going to give us an update on where we are in the budget so far. So I'll pass it over to Mr. Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you'll be happy to know that Mr. Harrison will be back with us part days starting this week, so you won't have to listen to me too much longer. Yeah, he's hopefully going to be back part days, back with us, so we're very pleased about that. But I'll lead you through the presentation tonight. And when we last met, we outlined a schedule for you, and what that indicated that on this evening's meeting, we'd be looking at grants and transfers to reserve and some of our capital and internal rents. On April 4th, we hope to get into the revenue side, non-tax and taxation revenue, and hopefully we'll be able to put this bed, if not on April 4th, hopefully by April the 18th. At that time, we'll also have an introduction into the utility budget, and then on April 18th, we'll have an introduction in material for you relating to the capital budget. Now, what I'd like to do tonight is go through a couple things. First, the grants and fees for service, then get into our transfers to capital reserves, and then our internal rent. But before we do that, I thought it would be good just to give you a bit of an update as to where we left off. And as the last meeting ended, we'd gone through some key areas. One was the labor and benefits impact, the debt servicing impact, the materials and contracts. And at that point, when we left off, our increase was about 4.7% on the expenditure side, and that represented a little bit over $4.2 million. So tonight, what I'd like to do is complete the presentation on where all of our expenditures are, and then later on in the presentation, there are some recommended reductions and cuts that we would like council to consider. So the first thing is the grants. And what we've got is an indication of what the 2011 grant requests are and the 2010 amounts. And then on the far right-hand column, it shows what the variance is. So based on last year's to this year's total, we have a variance of $125,000, or in other words, we have requests from the groups of that additional amount of money. And you can look down the list, and our recommendation would simply be this, and depending on where council wants to go, but our recommendation would be at minimum that we freeze the amount at 2010 levels, finding a reduction right off the bat of $125,000. Council may wish to consider that list further, and council may wish to consider having these groups come in and make presentations. We are still awaiting some recommendations on some of them from the Recreation Committee, and we would expect those recommendations to come back to council for April the 4th meeting. We have not got their determination on that
Want to
yet.
wait for questions until he's finished?
If you have questions now, though,
Yeah.
that's fine. Councillor Ioannoni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. When these committees come, and I'm going through these grants, and I'm remembering the exercise that we've done over the past few years where we've said to them, we are going to wean you off these grants. I don't know when we're going to do it. So as I went through this, and I'm reading my own notes, I would pretty much cut all of them out. And as I was going through it, what I wanted to know was, when a grant is applied for at the city, does the agency that's applying for the grant tell us how much they have in reserves and how much they have cash on hand?
There is financial information that we ask for, and I don't believe we included all of that in council's package, but we can certainly provide that. There's just so much paper that comes in with that, but if there's certain questions, we can certainly get that information for you.
Thank you. As we got an addendum on Friday delivered to our houses, because there's two that look very much like this. It's the black and white one I'm speaking from, not the color one. And the reason I looked at that and I thought, you know what, it's time we need to wean ourselves off that whole entire $594,000. When I read the new submittments, I wonder how people don't understand what we've been telling them every year. We are A, not going to entertain new requests, and B, we're not going to entertain any increases. That people don't seem to get that, and they still put increases ahead. But as I go to page 4 of this, I'm sorry, page 5, and we go year-over-year comparison, and I look at how much the increase is going to be this year in our long-term debt interest charges. We're up $1.6 million. See, long-term debt interest charges. And I wonder, where are we going to get that money? And we have to find those dollars somewhere. And we're paying, and this is not because our interest charges are increased on things people are not using. The Gale Center and the new arena are used immensely. I'm in the Gale Center and the Community Center. And I'm in the Community Center 5 times a week. I think it's one of the best things we ever did. And now we're paying for them. We have to find that money somewhere. If we've been telling agencies since the start of the recession, and I think since Councillor Puttick, that we were going to start cutting grants till we weren't giving grants anymore, maybe we really have to bite the bullet and do it. And I'm a bleeding heart, and I know I don't want to cut things like Women's Place and Project Share, but we've really been telling these groups for years that we're going to do it. Maybe in the year that we have that kind of long-term debt interest charges coming out now and we have to find those increases, maybe it's time that we start to fund our own house before funding other people's. And it is not going to make us popular by any means, and I don't want to sit on those committees. And it's not going to make us popular. As a matter of fact, people are going to be very upset with us that sit on those groups, but maybe doing the financially responsible thing instead of the popular thing at this point might be something we have to do when we start looking at those long-term debt increases. I know I'm going to get all the phone calls and emails, but nonetheless, maybe it's time we actually did that. And I'd like Mr. Todd's comments on, do other municipalities fund their type of Project Share and their type of Women's Place and their YWs? Are we the only ones doing this?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, it really varies across from municipality to municipality. It truly does. I don't believe, from my experience, that there's municipalities that fund it to this level, at least on the grant side. The fee-for-service side is a little bit different, because that's truly services that if they weren't providing it, say for tourism, that you'd be having tourism staff here and things of that nature. But these, on the grant side, most municipalities are really into a program where they're attempting to wean off, for lack of better words, the grant process. So, and it might be at a minimum, as I said, our recommendation at minimum would be that we hold it at last year's level. But council may want to consider a longer term strategy. You may want to actually put something in place to say, let groups know, here's our strategy over the next, so many years, and be ready for it. And tell them now, so that, we're not sort of in March, partway through their fiscal year as well, so we're giving them advance notice of that in advance.
Yeah.
So if next year we're going to you called it zero-based budgeting, could we give them warning this year that next year, I mean, we've said it, but actually put it in a motion that next year we are not going to be funding these requests? Do we simply not accept these requests, or do we say we can't afford it? Because we're getting our budget piecemeal by piecemeal, I don't think we can afford it anymore.
Okay. Councillor Carrio, Thompson, and Morocco.
Just to that point, Mr. Chairman, there's a growing number of businesses in our community that won't fund, that are talking about not funding people that are being funded by the municipality. Some of my peers are saying to me, I will not consider donations to people who are already being funded by your council, who's already deciding for me that I'm going to pay them. They consider it double dipping. So those type of people, I'm sure, would look more favorably on this if they thought that we weren't reaching in their pocket, taking their money and giving it to them. So that's another side of that. My other question was, I agree with Councillor Iannone. If we're not going to cut it, and I would be in favor of cutting it, but if we're not going to cut it, I'd like to see a complete financial picture on everybody that asks us for money. And I haven't seen the paper or the reporting structure that shows us what they have. But I'd like us to have a look at the complete financial picture on everybody that we're giving money to.
But we'd be happy to get
including
that.
assets, money in the bank, reserves. I'd like to see exactly what shape they're in before they come and expect the city to hand out money, because I know that there's business people that are in dire straits, that have a terrible financial statement and are having trouble paying their mortgages and their taxes. And when we vote to do this, we are taking more money out of their pocket and handing it over to someone else. And some of the business people might not want to fund certain charities for whatever reason. They don't want to do it, and we're deciding for them that they must do it.
Okay. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Morocco, please.
Yes. I think I go through this exercise every year. There are a couple of grants up there that, in my opinion, are regional responsibilities.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if there has ever been contact or discussions with the region regarding some of those grants there that deal with, obviously, regional issues and, in fact, provincial issues, and should be really not on that page whatsoever.
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, we've not had any specific discussion with the region on any of these, but I don't disagree with you that that might be something that we would need to do. Some of these maybe are more appropriately placed at that level.
The YMCA,
YW.
Sorry, YW, the Women's Place, you know, these are really, they have to be funded, they need support, I don't doubt that, but they are clearly responsibility of the regional government. There are other seniors housing, whatever, all regional responsibilities. Why are we not approaching or going with these groups to the region and saying this is beyond our capacity, and to see if there's something that can be done to get them off the city's responsibility altogether?
Okay, Councillor Morocco, please.
Oh, I did have one other.
Okay.
The one at the bottom, 210, up to, or 0 to, and 210 to 55,000, what is that?
It's an ask.
Yeah,
they're asking for money.
They never had any funding from us last year through the grant process. They had OPG money last year, and that was the last year of that money. So now they've come in with a separate grant request for 55,000.
You know, some of these things we got to look on at return on investment to the municipality, just what kind of benefit that we get from some of these requests. $500 and almost $600,000, that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Morocco, please.
Yes, Chair. I agree that when times are tough, we really have to look at it, but I also understand that a lot of these groups really rely on the money that they're getting from city. And I know that going back to 2004, when the first on council, it was kind of tough to try and say who you were going to cut out and keep on. But I know that we have to stop, and other areas are not funding to the amount that we are. But it was a good point too, that a lot of these are regional. So to Councillor Thompson's point, that a lot of these should be looked at from a regional perspective, and that would definitely help us as well. But I think with all due respect to the organizations, they really have to have enough advance notice that they're not going to receive any funds. And I don't think it would be fair just to chop them off at the knees right now, this year, without no notice. And I think that maybe what we have to do is say, this is how it is this year, next year, this is what we're going to limit to, so that they're aware and they can have a year or two of big plans. So I appreciate that being taken into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Wing?
Quite frankly, I thought we gave them that notice last year, but I might be mistaken.
We did it.
You know, I've never seen a year as bad as this one in terms of, as Councillor Iannone pointed out, our debt servicing. Like, we are really in over our heads this year. I do, however, think that 3 of them probably should be moved to fee-for-service. For instance, the Niagara Falls Horticultural Society, it's not a great deal. We get a huge return on investment. They volunteer. They're asking for $648 in return for that. They do the landscaping outside the Victoria Avenue Library, the Armory, and other places around town. We get a lot of bang for a buck there, and I think that is more of a fee for service that we get from them. Village of Chippewa Citizens Committee, same thing. It's primarily to cover the insurance for the Cummington Square Sunday evening concerts, which are very well attended and very popular in the former village of Chippewa. Maybe what we should do is just cover the insurance for those Sunday night concerts, because it would be a shame to see them be discontinued for lack of the insurance. And the Niagara Falls Concert Band, that's the band that does our Remembrance Day service. That's the band that plays at Canada Day for us. I look at that as a very, a good return on investment for that fee-for-service. We throw out a lot of money at out-of-town bands to come in and do one parade. And this is a band that's there whenever we ask them to be. And, it's basically to keep up their uniforms, pay the royalties on the music they use, have the music director, that sort of thing. So to me, that is not a grant, but it's actually a fee-for-service as well. So those 3 I see differently, but I'm in agreement with Councillors Iannone and Carrio that, we've been saying this, and sooner or later, we're just going to have to pull the plug. And I do like Councillor Thompson's suggestion that, yes, we should be going to the region with them and making the pitch there, because that is where it more properly belongs. We don't handle Ontario Works or other social services here municipally. It's their job, not ours.
They hand it down to us all the time.
I know. Thank you. Councillor Gates?
Thanks very much, Councillor Pierangelo. It's interesting you're bringing up the region. They're only $300 million in debt, so I don't know how much you're going to get out of the region. But I have a couple questions before I address an issue on the reserves. I think the reserves is something that you can take a serious look at. And I'll give you an example. When I was campaign chair of the United Way, going back a number of times, they would come and ask for money from the United Way, and we would give it to them until we checked their reserves. We found out that they had more money in their reserves than the United Way did. So to that point, I think we should take a look at the grants and say, okay, what are your reserves? And if they got $1 million in the reserves, what do they come to the city for? I think there's some things that we can look at. As far as some of the other ones like Project Share and stuff, again, I don't know what the reserves are. I think we really have to take a serious look at that. But what I'd like to find out, and I was actually hoping that Mr. Harrison was back, and I know he's on his way to recovery, and that's great news. But for somebody like myself, and I'm trying to piecemeal this together, and I actually like the process they're doing, but I'd like to know on January 1st of this year, what would be our total debt?
Well, we have two different, I'll give you two different numbers and I'll give you a total. But we had, debt really at the end of the year was about 40, a little over $42 million. And then we just issued new debt on the Gale Center, which is about $32 million. So our total debt as it stands right now is about $75.5 million.
Okay, and what's the interest rate that we're paying on the debt?
Well, it's funny because we just, there's different rates on when you issue the debt. So for last year's debt, whatever we issued there would have been at a different rate. But generally, they're, to get put in perspective, the debt that just came back on the arena is 4.7% over 30 years. So there may have been other debt that we issued late last year that was lower than that, smaller amounts, shorter term. But again, it's all variable depending on when that debt gets issued.
So it's safe to say that the arena, which we're going to have to pay over a period of time, I believe it's 30 years.
Yeah, 30 years.
You'll be paying 4.7
for 30 years.
For 30 years on that particular debt.
Yes.
And on the $42 million that we have in debt,
yes,
that we had prior to January 1st, you're not quite sure of what that rate is, but it would be probably lower than the 4.7?
Some of it might be higher because if it was debt we issued 10 or 15 years ago, it might be higher than that. So my guess would be it'd probably be in that, 2 or 3% range up to maybe 6% range, something like that.
Okay, and what bank are we dealing with? Like, who are we dealing with for the debt?
Well, all of our debt is issued through the upper tier municipality, so all of our debt is issued through the region. We don't have the legislative authority to issue debt. So whenever we need debt, we apply to the region and tell them, here's how much we need, and then they go out to market or find out where the best deal is. But on the arena, that debt is through Infrastructure Ontario. So essentially, it's the government of Ontario that's financing that debenture.
So that's quite interesting because the government's rate of interest rates are substantially lower than 4.7. I would think that the government, rather than putting municipalities into the debt that we're facing today, would give us the rate that the Ontario government can actually do in lending municipalities. Because obviously, what transpired here is that if you didn't do some of the projects right away, you wouldn't have got the stimulus money. So you would have been left out, and what happens is you end up in a situation where the city, the residents, and obviously this council has a substantial amount of debt that we're going to spend a lot of the money that could be used on infrastructure in servicing that debt. And the fact that you told me that it was a government, that we get it from the government at the higher rate, really doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and maybe something that we could talk to our local MPP about on that. I guess the only thing that, the other question that I had around that was about a local bank, but you've answered that. That was my other question that I put out here about the local bank and how that works. So it would be an issue that I could take up, obviously, with the region. So I do appreciate that, because I think it's important for not only the councillors, but also the residents to know where we're starting at and how much debt we're going to start from starting this year. The other thing that I'd like to get, although it may be all included in here, but as you know, with not being a chartered accountant, some of this stuff from each one, you got to kind of go back and forth. I would like a breakdown of the exact debt, if that's possible, to give out to the councillors, so they know exactly how we got here. So if somebody says to me, well, how did the city get, $74, $75 million in debt, I can say, well, it was for the arena, it was for this, it was for this. And I think that would make it a little easier for the residents to understand how you got into this position and how we got to make some tough decisions going forward to help us get out of that. Obviously, it's going to be over a long period of time. We're not going to get out of this in a short period of time. But I think that would be helpful to the residents as well. So I appreciate the time.
If I could on that, Mr. Chair, through the councillor, what our intention is, once we get through the budget process this year, one of the things we've talked about is a debt strategy. And I think that would be a good time to bring that information forward. show all of the existing debt we have, because in part of your debt strategy, you're really going to look at managing that debt as you go into the future. But it's important to look at the debt and what debt is going to be falling off and when it's going to be falling off, because that may be new room on expired debt that may become available to you in the future. So we really have to manage this over a longer period of time, and that's part of the whole debt management strategy we want to present to you. So that would be information, if we could at that time, bring forward and give you the whole picture on the debt.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll carry on. The next part that we'd like to look at is just on the fee for service, and we did have a little bit of a discussion already on this in the previous debate, but I just want to share with you what our intention is, and the chair raises a very good point on having reports come back. At our senior management team meeting last week, said we don't really want council dealing with this matter tonight. I just want to put it in perspective to see the magnitude. Again, on about $5.8 million request for this year, we're up about $170,000, but the majority of that comes from the library board, and there's a few other smaller amounts down the chart. But what I've asked is on each of those fee-for-service organizations on the left-hand side of the chart, our staff will be coming back on April 4th with a report on each of those items or groupings of items with their specific recommendations saying, we believe that we're getting good service, or this is what they provide for us, or this is how it fits into our strategic directions. So we're going to have that come forward. So, for example, Mr. Felicetti will be coming forward on the illumination board, the tourism and festival of lights. Kathy Moldenhauer in recreation will be coming forward on badminton club, lawn bowling, swim lessons, Boys and Girls Club, Optimist Park, Chippewa Parks, Fireman's Park, as an example. So you'll be getting detailed reports on each of those for your April 4th meeting. So I don't really need you to deal with this tonight. I just wanted to put it up there, explain to you what would be happening, and that you'll be getting a staff report back outlining exactly what we're getting for these dollars and how it fits into our strategic directions, whether we have an existing agreement. So for example, on the Airport Commission, there's an existing agreement. We're going to identify to you how that works on a per capita basis and give you a little bit more detail. So we'll deal with this on April 4th on the fee-for-service issues. And we'll be asking any of these groups that want to come and listen to that debate that night can certainly come and listen to the debate as those reports get presented. So the next slide gets us into further expenditures that we wanted to review with council. So the next one is the transfers to reserves and capital. And again, down the right-hand column, you can see the increase, and it gives you the department by department breakdown as to where that's coming from. And in the administrative services, it really, in that part, was dealing with an election, contribution election reserve. Municipal works, it's divided amongst roads, storm sewer, sidewalks, and fleet. In transportation, dealing with contribution to reserve for future capital, and so on. Business and development, I believe the $200,000 was for Sylvia Place contribution to a reserve. So as we get further in the night, we'll talk about how we can deal with these. Now, most of these amounts, if you recall last year, we did cut quite a bit out of our capital side of the budget. If you recall, we had about a $2 million reduction in our expenditures overall last year, and the majority of it came from our capital. So just to put it into perspective, what we'd asked all the department heads to do was to give us what you believe we need to have to operate. This is the wish list. It's not where we expect to end up, but it was the wish list. So don't let these numbers scare you, and as we get further on, we'll talk a little bit further about where we're looking at some reductions in these areas. So the next slide gets us into our internal rents and transfers. And this one will get a little bit confusing to understand, but quite simply put, the majority of the money you're seeing here are our internal transfers and rents that we pay ourselves. So the majority of this money is really our fleet, where departments are paying for their fleet services. So that's the amount of money you're seeing here. So this is the cost of And if you see on the increase and decrease, what we've done is, just to put it in perspective, we've had Catherine Louie, our manager of capital asset management. Catherine's with us here again tonight. She's gone through and done a fleet review in terms of making sure the allocations for those transfers are right. So you can see, for example, we didn't have the allocation right. We haven't appropriately accounted for that. So if you can look in fire across there. If you look at the 2011 budget of $899, that is the cost of maintaining that fire fleet, the actual cost. In previous years, we never really had the number right. But what was happening is Municipal Works was absorbing the cost of maintaining that fleet. So they were getting dinged for higher expenditures than was necessary. So if you look into 2011, we've now believe we've got the actual distribution right, but it means that we based on our actuals last year, we're about $210,000 difference. Okay. So now, I don't want to confuse you, but we'll come back to that when we talk about the revenue. But this is an internal charge. Pardon me? I'm sorry.
Sorry, just a question there. When you talked about reserves, what do we have in our reserves? Sorry, what do we have in our reserves?
Our reserve for fleet?
No, just don't.
Oh, total reserves?
Total reserves.
Gosh, I don't have a total number for you. Yeah, go ahead, Catherine. Maybe just a ballpark number of, those would be every reserve that we have?
No, that'd be fine. Well, since we're talking about debt and everything, I want to
Yeah.
know what our reserve is.
All reserves, all in, including development charges, runs around 36 million.
And development charges of that would be,
Charges.
so about 36 million. Now, we can get you a listing of that too. And those are divided by.
Well, that will be given to the entire council, will it not be? So I don't want
Yes, we
anything
could-
special.
Yeah, no, we could get it for everybody.
Okay.
But that would be distributed down to a number of reserves that we're required to hold and other reserves that are just special purpose reserves.
And my next question would be, based on the last 4 years or 6, is that within our allocation of a reserve fund that we're supposed to be maintaining, and how are we,
Well,
I guess,
what we did last year, we cut out some of those transfers to reserves because that was a way to get the budget down. So we're not seeing as many transfers into those reserves over the last couple of years. But the strategy was to try and get expenditures down. And the way you get the expenditures down is you
take from reserves?
Well, you can cut from reserves, you
Yeah.
can cut from capital, or you can look at your other spending. So last year, we tried to give a combined strategy of taking a little bit out of every area. So although we didn't deplete the reserves to any great degree, we also didn't make contributions from the operating budget into the reserves either.
Okay. What should we be at with our reserve? Maybe is that something that you could also bring back too?
Now, there's some reserves, for example, on development charges, we'd argue that we're underfunded in that reserve because, we have commitments and there's other reserves that are there, special purpose reserves that are there available for council to really spend on whatever projects they wish. But we can get a report on that and actually get a listing of what those reserves are.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Todd and Catherine. Thank you.
Councilor Thompson.
Yes, well, I think you have to be very careful when you talk about $36 million in reserves. Most of those reserves are committed.
Quite a few would be.
Huh?
Quite a few would be, yeah.
For sure they are.
Yeah.
And your development charges, we have outstanding debt that we don't have sufficient money to pay off the development charges.
No, it is underfunded, that's for sure, yeah.
Yeah, so $36 million sounds like we're in pretty good shape, but when you look at how they're committed.
There are a lot of commitments in that money, for sure. And development charges is a very good example of that, where there's a big liability and it's underfunded right now. But okay, so we'll move on, and we'll so what I wanted to be able to do here is when you look at the overall year-to-year comparison, this kind of gives you just a snapshot. And again, what we've been trying to do this year is give you the object codes along the left-hand side, which give you not a department-by-department breakdown for this presentation. It's in your detail that you've got, but this gives you an object view across the whole corporation. So when we look at salaries and benefits, it's corporate-wide, employee benefits corporate-wide. All of these are corporate-wide expenditures. If you look down at the total, the proposed expenditures are $97 million, almost $98 million. Last year we were almost $91 million. I'll come back next week and we'll talk about the tax revenues, but if we go to the next slide, I just wanted to zero in on, this is a summary of where all of your increases are in spending this year. It's in labor and benefits at 1.4% or 1.3 million. Debt servicing, and again, these are committed dollars. 2.2 million for the debt servicing for the Gale Center and the Boys and Girls Club. That represents 2.5% of the increase. We've got materials, contracts, and rents. That's about $1 million. And in there would be your gas, fuel, your fuel prices increase. We estimate that's going to be about $300,000 more. Your insurance increases, which is about close to $300,000. Those are things that we really can't control. Again, they're committed dollars for this year. Then we next have transfers to capital, and then the internal rents and transfers that I just talked about with mostly our fleet. That gives a total increase on expenditures of about 7.1 million. That represents an expenditure increase of 7.9%. And again, this is the wish list. This is what all of our department heads felt that was money that needed to be put forward, at least talked about, in terms of them moving forward with some of the programs and capital projects that they'd like to see done. The next slide that we get into gets into some recommended reductions. And what we did as a staff, we've gone over this over the last week or so, and what we're proposing here, and we sent out the detail to you. There was a detailed sheet that came along with the presentation on Friday. It probably should be the last sheet, I would think. And so if you look at that detail of proposed cuts, it's a sheet that looks like this at the end of your presentation that you got Friday. So for example, in materials, I just, at a staff level, we have problem recommending food. And we just feel that we need to get through a financial cycle here. We need to sort of get your spending. That's why I know this is a bit different for you this year, but we really needed to get you a little bit focused on spending. So if we can get our spending, our expenditure, and I guess I will be critical. I said I wanted to be critical, but in terms of when you looked at the process the region went through, they presented an overall budget. Well, their spending was up about 6.5–7%, but they're coming in with a tax reduction. It was because on the revenue side they had room to maneuver. So before we even give you the look at the revenue side, we're trying to say let's try to get our expenditures, to a comfortable level. And I could perhaps just show you the.
Through the chair to the CEO, I guess my confusion, I hate to keep going back to the grants, but you're requesting staff take out $1.6 million of money we know we need in those areas, but you're only asking us to cut $185,000 in grants. I guess I would say to you, why wouldn't you ask us to allocate the grant money to capital to roads, fleet, and storm, which we all campaigned on, by the way, and not say to us, this spending is to take care of somebody else's house. Why don't you transfer that spending and take care of your own house rather than cutting projects here? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Councillor Cario has asked many times, why do the grants, which becomes a political discussion here, why do you leave it to us to recommend what to cut? And why are we cutting a bigger percentage of infrastructure projects Why didn't you come and say, you know what, you can't afford to give those grants? Other municipalities don't give those grants. My recommendation to you is not give all that grant money and allocate it to the projects you told the residents you were gonna do.
I wouldn't disagree with you, but.
But make the recommendation.
Well, but from our standpoint, we've never controlled that side of the equation. I mean, we came last year and had some strategies and it didn't get much legs, and we thought, okay, at least we can do is say, let's hold the line. And that's what we're doing with a lot of these requests. We're basically saying, hold the line, because this is new money that's being taken back out. And I don't disagree with you. There's grants on there that I truly believe we should be spending money. My senior management staff says it all the time. We've got to be taking care of our core services first.
Tell us what grants you think that are.
Well, I'd be happy to come back next time and do that.
Okay, that's great.
Be happy to do that. If that's the direction you want us to. I didn't want to be that bold to do that, to be quite honest with you, but.
I would like
Counselor?
to make that motion that he comes back next time and tell us exactly what grants you believe we should not be in the business of doing.
And fee for services too.
And fee for services too,
We'll
because.
cut back on that too.
Yeah.
Okay, there is
If that's what you'd like us to do.
There is a motion by Councillor Ioannoni on the floor, seconded by Councillor Wing, that the CAO come back with a report next meeting dealing with cuts to our permissive grants and our fee for service. Any question or comment before I call the motion? To the motion, sure.
I just wanted to reflect Councillor Iannoni's comments that we all campaigned on fixing the infrastructure. I've been saying for years, we need to focus on our core services. And we should also be looking at the strategic priorities that we just approved not too long ago, and what directly fits with that and what is a lot more peripheral. And we've got to cut out the peripheral stuff. I mean, time to stop talking about it and act. So, we can't service, we've had an extra $1 million in just interest alone this year. We've got to find that money. There's a lot of people who are trying to hang on to their houses. They can't afford property tax hikes, and we have got to do what we said we would do, which is fix our roads and our sewers. And it's like, let's get on with it.
Sorry, Councillor Marco.
To that point, you definitely have to have the equipment that's going to be able to go out there and do it, so you can't cut that either.
Yeah, and what I could say on the fleet part of it, last year, we had about $1 million in our fleet replacement allocation. We cut, to get to where we were last year, we cut about $500,000 out of that. Just on our very, very preliminary review, we truly believe as we go forward with our existing fleet, that really should probably be funded to the tune of about $1.2 million a year, if you want to keep it, on a current depreciation scale, on a current depreciation cycle. We've had vehicles that have been long overdue, but it just puts it in perspective. But I want you to think about this as we go forward and as we come back to talk about a longer-term debt strategy as well. So I think all of this comes into play with that as we move forward. So
I'll just call the motion if you.
Okay.
That's okay. There is a motion on the floor that the CAO come back with a report dealing with cuts to grants and fee for services that the city gives out. Any question or comment before I call the motion?
What's the criteria for your cuts and your reductions?
I think Councillor Ioannoni wants to answer that for you.
Thinking, when the CAO stands there and says, my senior staff have been telling me forever that these need to be cut, then as your council, I want to know what your senior staff is telling you needs to be cut. Because if contrary to cutting those things that you feel need to be cut, and we're cutting things your staff think they need, then we're not getting the whole picture. I don't call it bold, I call it doing your job. So come back and tell us.
Be happy to do that. I just put it in perspective, but I think what we have to do is look at it in terms of sort of our core services and try to take that approach. But I'm going to tell you, we will have some differing views here because we may even get recommendations from, for example, the Recreation Committee that may be coming forward and saying, we think we should continue to fund this. So I anticipate that happening, but as long as we're okay to have some recommendations from us, it may be contrary to what even some of our committees are saying. So,
Councillor Ioannoni.
I believe that you will have every committee that is listening to this conversation tonight calling their executives, coming up with the pitch to keep us funding them. So I can anticipate that we open ourselves to that when we open this conversation. So I understand exactly what you're saying. The thing is, we can't afford our own house. We can't, the residents are telling us they can't afford hikes. We can't do everything anymore and pay off everything we've purchased or built. So the difficult decisions have to be made by you and by us. So all I'm asking you is for those conversations you're having, bring them forward in a report, because I would like to know what all our senior staff is thinking. That I just, why cut what we need as opposed to what you don't think we need?
Yeah, and as we go forward, the reports that you'll get back at the next meeting then will be on the fee for service. You will have a whole series of reports from different directors on those particular fees that relate to their area of responsibility. On the grants, I'll have a report back making some suggestions and recommendations on where we can cut on the grant side. So there'll be there'll be a whole series of reports on these then for April 4th.
Okay, I have Councillor Iononi, Wing, and Gates. Oh, sorry, Councillor Thompson, Wing, and Gates. Oh, sorry, I know.
Could you, we've had this discussion almost every meeting when we discuss the budget. Where do we stand with the provincial grant? Do you know what that is going to be? And what is the reduction that may come from the province?
Yeah. On the OM,
The
fund.
3.9 million we got previous.
Yes.
What are they talking about now?
It's part of the problem.
It's I think it's about an $800,000 reduction from last year. And we got notification of that in December. And so we still got about 2.4, 2.5 million. Yeah.
Okay, so 800,000 there.
Yeah.
What about the casino assessment issue? Where does that?
Not yet resolved, and continuing to have dialogue. We have a meeting scheduled within the next, I think it's within the next 2 weeks to continue that dialogue. But we're now getting to the proper people at OLG, and we hope to move that along fairly quickly now.
You have no idea what kind of a hit you're going to take there?
Not yet, no. We had made a provision last year of about 1.9 million on the revenue side, but we've made provision for that.
1.9 mil.
Yes.
And what was the other major? There's three major.
Niagara Parks Commission.
Niagara Parks Commission.
Niagara Parks.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Harrison's back this week. I talked to Ms. Booker on Saturday, and I promised that we'll get her the documentation she needs within the next 2 weeks to complete their decision process. They asked us for additional information to justify the payment in lieu, or the grant. And we've put some material together, we just haven't gotten in their hands.
Do they not know how this started and what the reason for
Yes.
the payment to the municipality was? The direct competition with the private sector, and all the private sector saying the Parks Commission, every time we make a move, they have a new venture in direct competition, a restaurant or whatever, with the private sector, and they don't pay taxes. It's unfair, and as a result of that, there was a resolution that they were going to pay cash in lieu, and they said, now we're paying our full taxes, which is a joke. They're not paying their full taxes, and it would be astronomical if they did. And here we are, $1 million, and they're suggesting that they don't know whether they should pay it or not, or what's the justification. The justification was made many, many years ago, and if they have a problem with that, they got a real fight on their hands.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Councillor Wing?
And they also receive services from the city that would cost them way too much to try and provide themselves. So there's also financial justifications for it, exactly. My question is really trivial compared to that. I'm just wondering about, on the details of proposed cuts page.
Yes.
Municipal Heritage Committee, about halfway down the page, submitted 2011 budget, $200, proposed cut, 1,000, so we're 800 in the hole. Is the committee expected to reach in their pockets and come up with that 800, or I'm just wondering how we arrived at.
We're down to the Heritage Committee.
Yeah.
No, that was in the advertising account.
Yeah. I just don't see how when there's 200 submitted, 1,000's cut out. You know, the advertising I know is statutory.
They had submitted a budget of, it was like $1,200, and we took it back to $2 only because of the, I'm sorry, $2,000.
Oh, okay, there's a zero missing.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, I'm fine with
Yeah.
it then. Okay, I was just wondering, because I couldn't see how you could take
No, sorry.
1,000 away from 200.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
it's
no, that's
2,000
fine
it's
then.
2,000.
Okay, good,
Yeah,
good.
sorry,
Okay.
that's it.
Councillor Gates?
Yes, to the point on the grants, on the report, are you going to bring back exactly what's in each one of their reserves as well? I know we discussed that.
Yes.
But I think that would help council as well.
I think what we'll do is we'll put a package together, and it'll have a detail on the grants. It'll talk about what their, you know, any reserves that they may have, what their operating costs are, we have some detail here, but what the grant actually is going for, and that'll be part of the report for sure.
And on the Niagara Parks Commission, it's my understanding that they owe us 2 years, not one?
They have not paid us for 2010, and our expectation is we would budget the same amount for 2011.
Okay, and to Councillor Thompson's point about they're in direct competition with some of the private companies, they haven't done a very good job in the last few things that they've done in getting into business that got them in some trouble as well. So sometimes I'll leave it at that.
And through you, Mr. Chair, we can, if you'd like, we can share that documentation once we get it off to the MPC. But Councillor Thompson's quite right. I mean, there was agreements that went back into the 70s that outlined the relationship, and our belief is that that relationship, even though our agreement that we had has expired, we just truly believe that the existing agreement, and my correspondence to them was simply that we roll over the agreement on another 5-year term with inflationary increase that, you know, we just cover that inflationary cost over the next 5 years. So.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Wing.
Yeah, just to Councillor Gates's point about the getting the financials on these organizations. I realize it's a lot of information. Can we maybe save on trees and just have it emailed to us? I'd prefer to get mine by email at least. You know, I can quickly scroll to what I really want to see, which is probably the mountain reserves.
Yeah, it's not sure. I guess it's whether we just take the time to scan it to get into the email, or whether we just get it out to you. But we'll try to find the best way to get that out to you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, Councillor Carrier.
Just one quick comment when you're talking about the grant. Remember the deal with the Parks Commission is that the provincial mandates, the province mandates, that they don't have to do tax. Really, our beef is with the province.
It's
Our beef is with
yeah.
the province, because the province mandates they don't have to pay tax, and then the province mandates that they have to be self-sufficient. And they also mandate that they have to look after everything from Fort Erie to LA.
Yeah.
So really, our beef should be with the province as well.
Yeah, those provisions are contained in the Niagara Parks Act, where that's outlined, provincial legislation. Yeah. So if I could just carry on. The last sheet that we've got here that shows those, the proposed cuts, so it's 2.8 million. I'd like to just take you to the next sheet and just try to sum this up.
Can we take the motion first? I'd like to take the motion.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor that report come back. Is there any other comments to the motion? If not, then I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Sorry, Ken.
Carry on. Oh, I'm sorry. So if I go to the next sheet, I just want to put it in perspective. These again are the expenditure items that we're having a lot of difficulty being able to reduce because they're committed expenditures. The debt servicing is committed. Fuel, we'd be foolish if we tried to cut fuel because, you know, we went back and looked at actual fuel from last year. We know what the fuel prices are. We have to make accommodation for those increase in fuel prices. Insurance, our insurance costs, we already know those costs. We're already paying those costs. That's a given. Our staff wages and benefits, for the most part, are given. We have contractual arrangements, benefit contractual arrangements, and that's the number you're looking at there. And then our internal rent, again, this is offset by revenue, and we'll talk about that next week, but this is an internal transfer to make sure we've got our allocations correct. So if you look at those committed expenditures there, you're looking at about $4.3 million. Now, when you go and look at the next slide, I just want to put this in perspective to you. If you look at our total expenses that were increases, and you take the proposed cuts that we just made, which are, or have council approve them, if that's what you'd like to do tonight, they're about $2.8 million. The difference between last year's expenditures and this year's proposed expenditures after cuts are about $4.3 million. So that number is just slightly below the previous slide, which is our commitments. So I guess I'm here saying, like, we're suggesting these cuts would get us down to the level. We simply don't know where we go from here after this 4.3 million, because for the most part, other expenses compared to last year have kept pretty much in line, because our commitments that we need to go into with our debt and our wages and our fuel and our insurance total just slightly over $4.3 million. The cuts we've put here forward tonight bring us just slightly, it's about $100,000 difference. And again, that's kind of where we're sitting after tonight's exercise. Now, I understand that you haven't seen the revenue side, but we just wanted to put it in perspective that most of that expenditure increase, which I'm not sure what a percentage that would be, probably about, on overall expenditures, 4.3 million on our expenditures is about, get the number here. That's about a 4.7% increase on expenditures over last year. Now, if you put that in perspective, about half of that is your debt. That's your arena debt. So if you look at sort of our other staff wages and fuel, you're talking about, our expenditures on our non-debt items being somewhere around 2.3%, 2.4%, which really isn't too far off the rate of inflation. And as we've explained before, our rate of inflation with the types of goods that we buy are generally over that rate, because we're a lot into petroleum products with fuel, oils, and all of our asphalt, our equipment, and our replacement of equipment and parts. Mr. Chair, I guess that's where we're at tonight. I don't know whether council wants to deal with these cuts tonight or whether they want us to come back with more information. These are the cuts that we're offering back. I know some of the councilors want to see the grants report as well. If you want to come back and bring this all together at the next meeting, we'd be happy to do that. Unless you'd like to deal with these or make some recommendations tonight, we'd be happy to deal with that as well.
Okay. I have Councilor Iononi, Carrio, and Mays, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not comfortable voting on anything till I've seen the whole picture. So I don't want to vote on anything tonight. I think we've asked for a lot of information. I don't like to ever vote on a budget if I haven't seen revenue and expenses. I want to see the whole picture before I vote on anything.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Carrio.
I was going to go to the same place, and I was going to answer our CEO's question, where do we go from here? Let's see what happens when he brings back that proposed cuts on grants and fee-for-service, when we look at it in conjunction with the whole picture, because if it's that bad, that's when we would decide we're going to make some serious cuts on that.
Yeah, and I do say with the revenue side, we're still putting the final touches on that. We definitely wanted to wait for Mr. Harrison to get back and firm those up. We should be in a position at the April 4th meeting to give you a bit better overall picture.
Just to follow up on it, you have a council who's willing to look at it.
Yes.
Willing to look at cutting more of the fee-for-service money and more of the grants.
Yes.
Take advantage of it. We're ready to cut some. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Councilor Mays, please.
No, that was going to be my question too. I wanted to see the revenue side, and I'm just wondering, market value assessment, has that gone up any dramatically, or are we expecting a large influx of revenue from that, or is it?
Well, Councilor, yeah, as you know, we're in the third year of a four-year phase-in.
Yes.
Yeah, third year of a four-year phase-in, which has about a 4% revenue impact. So we dealt with that this is the third year of that four-year cycle. Reassessment will come up again in 2013. So we're working through that. That'll be on your revenue picture that we can give you.
Okay. Mayor Diodati.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And one thing I did want to point out is, when you subtract the increasing commitments that we don't have a lot of control over, such as the debt of the Gale Center, which we're locked in, wages, we're locked in collective agreements, fuel, which are at the mercy of the world markets. When you factor that out, our expenses actually are slightly less than what they were last year, which were actually, how many years in a row have we lowered our expenses? 3 years in a row. Considering all that's gone on around us, I think staff is on the right track and they're doing a very good job. And Councilor Pietrangelo working with the staff in the budget, I'd say you're doing a very good job. I know we haven't seen the revenues yet, so there's no way to know for certain the full picture. But as far, and you always look at your expenses first. You don't offset it with, if you got more money, you spend more money. You start with your expenses. It's the responsible way to do it. And I have to say, even if we compare ourselves with the region, who had an awful lot of uploading, their expenses are way up. So I mean, our expenses, I'm part of that group, and yet we've got a bunch of people fiscally responsible fighting to bring that number down, and we have and we are. But I'd say overall, this is going in the right direction, and I'm happy to see it. And yes, we're going to do some more cuts, and we're going to look at some of the permissive grants, and fair warning to all the groups, but I'd say, good job. Let's not let this go unnoticed. I mean, we've held the line for 3 years running, expenses reducing each year when things are going up outside of the things that we're committed to. So I think we're going in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other council member that wishes to make a comment? If not, then I believe Mr. Todd is going to bring back the non-tax revenues on April 4th, so that council will have a full picture of the budget, and perhaps we can make some decisions then.
Thank you.
I'll pass it back to Mayor Diodati.
Okay, next order of business is ratification of Committee of the Whole. Councilor Iannoni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The following items are to be ratified from tonight's meeting of the Committee of the Whole. The Committee of the Whole minutes of February 28th, 2011 be approved. Under reports, TS 2011-17, the Downtown Board of Management request for 2-hour free parking on Queen Street and Valleyway. That the request for free parking along Queen Street and Valleyway be deferred until after the completion of the comprehensive parking operations study due in June. Under HR 2011-02, Fire Department full-time recruitment, that the matter be dealt in council chambers, and under new business, that the matters be dealt with in council chambers. And that was Mr. Clement. I so move.
Okay, moved by Councilor Iannoni, seconded by Councilor Morocco. All those in favor? Okay. Now, in camera, we didn't get to that. We're going to conclude that after tonight's meeting. Then we'll rise and report. Onto the consent agenda. Pardon me? Or the next meeting. We'll see how late we're going. Moved by Councilor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councilor Maves. All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. On the resolutions, we did deal with them, but we need to approve the first resolution. Moved by Councilor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councilor Maves. All those in favor? Okay, it's passed. Bylaws, we ask the clerk if there are any amendments to the bylaws listed for consideration.
No, Your Worship.
Thank you. Motion by Councilor Pietrangelo. First reading, seconded by Councilor Carrio. All those in favor?
Bylaws 2011-30 to 2011-36 read a first time.
Second.
Okay, second and third time by Councilor Pietrangelo, second by Councilor Carrio. All those in favor?
Bylaws 2011-30 to 2011-36 read a second and third time and passed.
Okay, and new business items before we go into Committee of the Whole. Okay, I do have one issue I do want to bring up. Yes, Councilor Thompson, did you have?
Yeah, it's late. I was going to forget about this, but it irks me so much that I can't let it go by. Several weeks ago, I asked if we could have a debate on NEDC at the council so we could solidify our comments with respect to what is going on there and what's going to come out in the final analysis with respect to that. And I know that there's all kinds of dialogue and discussion and debate going on there. But I was really taken aback by some of the comments that were made at the meeting with respect to the EDOs not getting along, and that the inference that was part of the problem. Anybody who has been up involved at the region or involved in this knows that the problem was not with the EDOs, but was with the Gedge syndrome at the regional level at NEDCO. And there's where the problem was. If it wasn't for Councillor Puttick several years ago suggesting that they weren't getting along, there was no dialogue, all of a sudden there was a major scramble by everybody to show that there was dialogue and discussion and they were working together. They pretended, they're pretenders, they pretended for a while, the region, that they were getting along with the EDOs. The EDOs in the 5 municipalities were getting along fine. The problem was up at that level. And then we have Mr. Lightstone, who I do not know, suggesting that blow up NEDCO as one of the members of NEDCO, suggesting that they blow it up when they've been up there defending it all this time, was extremely upsetting. I was involved in all of the discussions regarding getting a regional tourist organization formed within the region, and it was extremely difficult because there's a lot of parochialism and nobody wants to recognize, in my opinion, Niagara Falls is in the tourist business. Certainly Niagara on the Lake is. Is anybody else? That's questionable. But anyway, you had Mr. Gedge and Mr. Lightstone trying to indicate that the tourism body for the region should be NEDCO, and they've never been in the tourist business. They've never really had a hand in the tourist business, and yet we're trying to muscle their way, in my opinion, in to take it over. And actually, Mr. Lightstone made comments suggesting that if the group who was all together talking about how we would work this out, if we didn't come to grips with this and choose one organization, then the province was going to make their suggestion and how it was, and we would be the big losers. That's the kind of dialogue we were getting there. So when I saw this, I was incensed, to say the least. Hopefully, as a result of all of this, we're going to see a downgraded organization at the regional level, that the 5 EDOs will play a major role in what is happening there, and the region will go on and do external prospecting and trying to get leads here and circulate them, and also be the EDO for the other municipalities that that don't have an economic development officer. So I just want to set the record straight. Always been good cooperation, dialogue, discussion with the 5 EDOs. The problem existed up there. Puttick identified it many years ago and followed through on it, and apparently still is doing so through his job with Bullet Media. Anyway, I think he's done a great job. The problem up there exists, and hopefully we can have some positive things come out of it, and maybe the EDO or the NEDCO come out with a smaller organization, less than used to be $2.7 million budget. We're paying probably $500,000 of that. We could certainly use that in our economic development department to support what we're attempting to do here. So I had to get that off my chest.
Yeah. To this point? Yeah.
And just to piggyback on that, if anybody read the Niagara This Week column by Doug Draper, he highlighted very succinctly, isn't it interesting that Councillor Puttick, who drove them crazy with the waste at NEDC and couldn't convince his fellow council members to support him, now has to sit at home and watch his fellow council members say, oh, there's waste at the NEDC. He said, isn't that ironic that now that he's not there, these same guys think, oh, maybe he was right. So you have to give him kudos for being like a dog with a bone and saying, you know what, that was wasteful spending and I'm not backing down. And it's nice sometimes to see the newspapers come out and say, it wasn't just being aggressive. He had his numbers right.
Well, he was the Don Cherry of Niagara Falls politics, that's for sure. He was on the money. Got to give the guy credit. And also to echo Councillor Thompson and I, we spoke as well, and I said my comments, we were a little surprised when we got there to realize we were part of a workshop that had more to do with the region than NEDCO. I was a little surprised, and I said the only reference to tourism at NEDCO should be that we are not in tourism. I said, and I had no argument, I said nobody knows tourism better than Niagara Falls, and not one argument from anyone. I said, then Niagara and the Lake. I said, let those that know do. And you want to talk about wineries, Niagara and the Lake. Let everyone pick what they're good at, but let's not try to be everything to everybody, because you won't be good at everything. And you're absolutely right as far as the budgeting. We said the same thing. Take half your budget and target Toronto. Target the big city and spend it on a focused ad campaign. But not fancy brochures and leaflets that do absolutely nothing for economic development. Pardon me? And logos and all the other fancy things, you know.
The N-word.
The N-word. Councilor Morocco.
Just a couple of points I've been asked to bring forward, Your Worship, here. And I did have a conversation with staff. One point was in regards to the water deposit rebate not being given back, and I believe Jeff Holman will follow up with that report and then get back to me, just so that people are aware that we are actually looking at the rebate and how that works. So he did tell me that he will follow up on that later. I just want that to be known at council. Also, another conversation I had with someone that asked me to bring this to the attention also, Dean and Jason McLean, is it, that sit on this committee for the Mayor's Advisory Council on Disabilities. Apparently there was a committee that was formed far before the convention center was built to NCCC, and they addressed a number of disability issues and standards that should be set out. And unfortunately, I guess as of last week, and Dean, you can address this because you sit on the committee, it was brought to my attention that some of the standards were left out. Let me see, some of the issues are covered by a design standard, he said, and some portions are left to interpretation, which is unfortunate, I guess, that's what he says. What I bring is this information standards, but also practical knowledge of the disability. Unfortunately, some of these changes weren't addressed, and it's sad because they were part of the discussion before the shovel went in the ground. So he wants to know, are these disability issues going to be dealt with before the opening or after the opening, and is there an additional cost? So could you please let us know about that, Dean?
Well, through the chair, what I suggested to Councillor Morocco was that she get a motion from council and staff can report back on the accessibility at the convention center. As we've done with all new city facilities, staff and members of the committee have met with people involved, whether it's the convention center, whether it's the museum expansion, whether it was the Gale Center, whether it was the McBain Center. And part of the process usually is that we report back to council after the building's open to report back on what has been achieved as far as accessibility, and unfortunately often what hasn't been achieved as far as accessibility. Obviously there's still some things to be finalized with regard to the convention center, and I think it's appropriate that we come back with a formal report, because once again, a lot of the items aren't resolved yet or not finalized, and there's still a few things that need to be done, and we'd be happy to bring a report back to council.
Thank you very much, Dan. I greatly appreciate that. And just one more thing on a good news thing. I'd like to just thank the G&GH Auxiliary. They made their first payment pledge of $100,000 in their $500,000 commitment to our hospital. So I want to thank them very much for their hard work, especially in the hard times we've experienced in the last while. Thank you.
Well, that's great. We especially want to acknowledge the fact that there's a big difference between our foundation and the NHS, and we certainly support our foundation. Did you want to make a motion, Councilor Morocco, for the your request of the clerk?
Yes, I'm sorry, Your Worship. Dean, can I put that request exactly how you stated it? Thank you.
Seconded by Councilor Iannoni. All those in favor? Okay. Councilor Gates.
Thanks very much, Mayor Jim Diodati. I just wanted to, through you, ask staff. It was about 7 weeks ago I brought up about the convention center and how the 75 to 80 million dollars of that project wasn't done with local workers. And I asked for a list about 7 weeks ago of the work that was done, the companies that did it, and where they were from. I was told that I would get it within a couple weeks. I believe I've been very patient. It's now 7 weeks. I still haven't received that. I'm wondering through the mayor, can somebody tell me if I'll be able to get that? Like I said, I did request it. The second part to that is I had the opportunity, I guess almost 2 weeks ago now, to go to Ottawa. And Ottawa is, as we all know, is building a convention center, one that's worth about $179 million, I believe. And they tells you how exciting my life is. I was actually lobbying our MPs in Ottawa, but I was watching a Rogers cable show at 12 o'clock at night, and they had the show on the convention center. And a full hour show on it, talking about the convention center, talking about a number of things. And what I did is I took down some of the numbers, and I thought, well, you know what, maybe I wasn't being as fair as I should be with how we did ours around the local content. So I phoned the president of the Ottawa Convention Center, and I said, listen, I really enjoyed your show last night. You know, the fact that you told how much it was, they told about the $25 million in reserve they've had, who they feel their competition is, like is Washington and some of the bigger communities. So I thought it was a very good show, and maybe it's something that we should do with our own convention center on Cable 10. But I asked them the question, what is your local content of jobs? What workers actually did the work? And it was 80%. So I think I'm being fair and reasonable in saying, you know, what were the companies? When I met with Rob in Ottawa, I said to Rob, your government gave $35 million to this project, and yet 80% of the work went to workers in Oshawa, Toronto, Cobourg. I don't have the names of the companies that have been provided to me. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense if I'm a politician in Niagara Falls who's trying to bring stuff into our community. I've said very clearly, I think the convention center is great. I think hopefully it's very, very successful. It's owned by the taxpayers, so we really want it to be successful. But having said that, I really am disappointed that I haven't been provided that information. And then to that, I also thought, because I feel that as a councillor here now, an elected councillor now, we're responsible for it around this room on a go-forward basis. And I suggested that, was there any way that I can get the minutes of the board meetings? Because I think that's another fair request, so that when I'm making decisions, I'm educating myself on what's in the best interest of the city of Niagara Falls and the residents of Niagara Falls. So I know there's a few questions there, but I have tried to be upfront and said, you know, can I get this stuff? I think 7 weeks is a fair amount of time. But looking at Ottawa, they certainly did it. So on a go-forward basis, when we have big projects, you know, just like the discussion we had today with the firefighters, let's get local people back to work, or get them to work. I think that's the point. So I'm trying to find out if I can get the list of the companies.
Maybe I can ask Mr. Felicetti, our Director of Economic Development and Business.
Sure. In terms of the request for information in which local companies were engaged, we did provide the councillor with that information, but the information that the councillor is requesting is from Bonfield. Bonfield, through a design-build project, they engage a number of sub-trades. So we've asked them for that information. What I did relay is that Bonfield said their focus right now is getting the job done and getting the building open. And it's at their discretion to provide the information as a design-build scenario. But as staff, we've asked, we've sent emails, and so that was the response we received, and we did provide that response to the councillor. In terms of the FMC board, NCC board minutes, we did make that request to the management, and they were taking it to the board, and my understanding is they requested, I guess, a motion of council in that regard if council wishes to see those minutes. So that was also relayed as well. So that's the information today.
Just a follow-up, 7 weeks for Bonfield to provide that information to the city of Niagara Falls, I think is a fair request to a company that's doing the work at the convention center. So I don't know who you're talking to. The original statement was that, you know, they said they'd have it to me within 2 weeks. It's been 7 weeks. So I don't know who you're talking to there, but I don't think that's a unfair request on behalf of the city and this council on getting that. And I'm really surprised that Bonfield is holding this out for 7 weeks. I just want to know the list of the companies that perform the work, so that when I do meet with our local MP or our local MPP, which I've met with as well on these issues, I can say, here's the companies that perform the work with the tax dollars. And I don't think I'm being unreasonable. I think Bonfield obviously is.
Fair comment, and yet at the same time, I think the focus right now is we open this convention center up in a couple of weeks, and it's got to be a big opening. We're going to have a lot of dignitaries and provincial leaders down, and we want it to be a successful opening, and I'm sure we're going to get you that information afterwards, Councillor. Is there any other new business? No, just 1 second. I'd like, just before we do it, if you don't mind, indulge me just for a minute. I'd like to just bring up one point. We probably read in the media most recently in the last few weeks about Agent Orange being used in the province of Ontario quite extensively for 30 years, from the 50s right through to just about 1980. Specifically through all the hydro corridors, or at least that's as much as we know. You know, I was surprised when I was reading about it in some of the Toronto papers that, you know, that's a Vietnam agent that was used, that is associated with a lot of bad odd cancers, lymphatic leukemia, tumors, a lot of strange things. And then we find out for 30 years it was extensively used throughout our hydro corridors, which, as everyone knows here, go right through the city. And unfortunately, these people sprayed themselves with it. They were told it was safe at the time. And, you know, we've got people that were being born missing digits and all sorts of very odd occurrences. What I'm concerned about is that since the province had given the green light and said it was safe to use, that it was used by lots of agencies. And we just don't know exactly who all was using it. I've heard verbally that we did not use it in the city. I heard verbally it wasn't used in the parks. And I would just like to make a motion tonight that that we find out, first of all, where exactly it was used in the city in terms of the hydro corridors, what we know about that, Parks Commission, where else the province used it. Maybe did the Ministry of Transportation use it along the highways? Did the Seaway use it along the canal corridors? You know, the problem is for a lot of us as kids, we grew up, we played in these corridors. You know, there's fruit growing currently in these corridors. How does that affect people that are eating fruit that are in these areas that were sprayed for 30 years, or people that live backing onto these areas? I don't know the answers to this. I don't know who does. I've received some calls and inquiries from people from all over and from Guelph and places that are specialists in this field specifically, and I'm just hoping that we could get a motion to ask staff to investigate where in the city it's been used and that we can get clarification in writing, and then once we have this information, we can decide where to go next. Some people have asked me, you know, what's your intention? I don't have any specific intention, but I think if it happened here for 30 years that we have a right to know, and from there, whatever happens, we can decide. We don't need a Love Canal type situation in our backyard, and if this did happen, I think we deserve to know, and so I would make that motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, well, I can't make the motion then. I would ask that this motion be made. It was made by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Iannoni. Is there any discussion on this motion? Councillor Morocco?
I guess how in depth are you looking for staff to, is there information? I know that some people have been sourcing that out already, and then I don't know, is there any liabilities that we might end up having, Mayor?
Whether we do it or whether someone else does it, the way I see it, you know, if it was done, if there's liabilities.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's done, like as you'd say, the toothpaste is out of the cream, right? Or the
out of the tube?
yeah,
I know what you meant to say, yeah.
Yeah.
Jimism on this side.
Well, that was kind of a Jimism. But yeah, no, absolutely. Is the damage done? I mean, what's that?
It was, it didn't make sense.
That's right. Good one. But absolutely, I think citizens of Niagara Falls have a right to know. Yes, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, with my background with the health department, it was always known and very unusual that the Niagara Peninsula, and this is where the hydro corridors are, had a higher incidence of cancer in this area than other areas in the province. And they tried to link it back to more smoking within the region. But you know, this could be a very interesting scenario to determine if in fact it was utilized. Did that have some impact on the health of the citizens over the past 30 years? And is that ongoing, or is there still some residual effect with respect to that?
That's
So,
it.
yeah.
Great point. I heard, and then the other arguments, people said, well, the jet stream comes from coal-fired plants in the U.S., comes right through Niagara. That's why we have extra cancer. People used to say, well, the question was, living next to hydro corridors with the power cables going through, electromagnetic sources were causing these cancers. Maybe it was none of these. Maybe they were red herrings. Maybe could it have been the Agent Orange? I don't know. I don't know the answers to that. I know if you talk to people that had experience in Vietnam, if you talk to people or you read about these people who had experience spraying it throughout northern Ontario, it's horrible, the hell that they're going through right now. And if it happened, I think we have a right to know. And that's why I think it's a good idea that we investigate now that we're aware. So we have a motion on the table. Any other comments? All right, all those in favor? Okay, unanimous. And motion for adjournment, Councillor Mave, second by, hold on one second. And for those at home and for our Cogeco people, we are going to now have a in-camera meeting. We're going to rise and report at our next meeting. So the camera people can go home. They don't have to hang around here. We're going to reconvene in Committee Room 1. So do we need a motion for adjournment from now then? Okay, motion for adjournment from Councillor Mave, second by Councillor Iannoni. All those in favor?